Fang Xing was jolted awake by a choking metallic rust stench. To be precise, it was a cloying mix of machine oil, mildew, and socks left unworn for 3 months. Wait a minute, those socks were his own. That dragged him roughly out of unconsciousness. His head throbbed as if it had been stuffed into a tumble dryer and spun on high for half an hour, buzzing nonstop. Instead of panicking over who he was or where he'd ended up, his first instinct was to reach out beside him. A muscle memory forged from years behind the wheel. Check if he was still in the driver's seat. His fingers brushed a steering wheel. Worn, cracked leather, the texture of a 10-year-old beat-up Jetta. Thank God, I'm not blind, Fang Xing mumbled and pried his eyes open. Chaos sprawled across his field of vision. He sat in the driver's seat of a recreational vehicle, or more accurately, a dilapidated wreck that should have been hauled to the scrapyard years ago. 2 jagged cracks split the dashboard. The windshield was coated in a thick layer of dust, and a fist-sized hole gaped in the roof. Sunlight slanted through the opening, illuminating clouds of floating dust. The cabin was piled with random junk, empty mineral water bottles, half a sack of moldy bread, a rusted adjustable wrench, and an unclaimed packet of spicy beef instant noodles whose expiration date he had no desire to check. No used car dealer would touch this heap even for $3,000. Fang Xing's professional instincts kicked in as he mentally assessed the vehicle's condition. Engine, no audible hum, but gasoline fumes lingered in the air, meaning it could still be salvaged. Tires, hard to make out clearly, but the RV listed sharply to one side. The left rear tire was almost certainly flat. Interior space, roughly 8 square meters, a standard Type B RV, the barebones base model with 0 extra fittings. He massaged his temples, trying to piece together what had happened. The last fragment of memory he held. He'd been replacing shock absorbers on a customer's Civic at his repair shop when his phone began vibrating violently. A black pop-up notification flashed across the screen, and he never got a chance to finish reading it before a blinding burst of white light swallowed everything. The next thing he knew, he'd woken up here. Fang Xing pulled out his cell phone. The screen lit up, the signal bar completely empty. The time read 9:17 a.m. on an unknown date. 43% battery left, probably the only good piece of news he'd found so far. But what made his pupils shrink was a pin notification at the very top of his inbox. The sender was labeled with 2 characters, System. The message was short, and he read it twice through. Welcome to the highway game. You have been selected. The first wave of natural disasters will descend in 72 hours. Survive, or be erased entirely. Welcome to the highway game. You have been selected. The first wave of natural disasters will descend in 72 hours. Survive, or be erased entirely. Rules will unlock gradually as you travel. Hint, your RV is your only ally. Fang Xing stared at the notification for 10 full seconds. Then he spoke plainly to himself. Am I still dreaming? He pinched his thigh hard. Sharp pain flared. Shit. As someone who spent endless hours online, his first thought was a prank or elaborate practical joke. But there was 0 cell service. Silence hung so heavy it felt unnatural, and that post-apocalyptic rust and rot stench clung thick in the air. So vivid it made his nostrils burn. He pushed open the driver's door and stumbled unsteadily onto solid ground. A highway stretched out before him. A straight, endless stretch of asphalt split by deep cracks, wild grass sprouting through every fissure. On either side lay a boundless gray wasteland, not a single tree visible for miles. Wrecked sedans littered the roadside, crumpled and tipped at odd angles, their windows shattered as if something had exploded outward from inside each cabin. Wait. Fang Xing narrowed his eyes. Deep claw marks scored the driver's door of one abandoned car. They weren't scratches from metal collisions, but gashes torn by something with sharp claws. The metal around each mark curled outward, evidence of staggering brute force. He stepped back instinctively and scanned his surroundings. The wasteland was unnervingly quiet. No birds chirped, no insects buzzed, not even a breeze stirred. The oppressive silence sent cold shivers crawling up Fang Xing's spine. He'd visited countless remote wastelands for auto reviews and knew what a normal wilderness sounded like. Here, there was absolutely nothing. Fang Xing drew a deep breath and exhaled slowly. All right, stay calm, he muttered to himself. A habit picked up from years of test driving vehicles. First, this isn't a dream. Second, that natural disaster the system mentioned is almost certainly real. Third, figure out if this wreck can still run. He circled around to the front of the RV and knelt to inspect the engine bay. The hood radiated residual heat, proof the vehicle had been running not long ago. He pulled out the oil dipstick. The fluid sat just barely above the minimum line, barely usable. Minor oxidation coated the battery terminals, a trivial fix. The previous owner never bothered with maintenance. Not that it's my problem anyway. Fangxing popped open the rear compartment, standard terminology for an RV, not a trunk. Inside sat an iron toolbox. When he unlatched it, he found an adjustable wrench, screwdrivers, pliers, several rolls of electrical tape, and a length of steel wire. Fangxing's eyes lit up. Tape and wire can fix just about anything on four wheels. His haul was as follows. Half a case of mineral water, 12 bottles total, 3 packs of compressed biscuits, expired. But expired hardtack was practically brick hard and should still be edible. Emergency flashlight, batteries still charged. 1 moderately clean towel, disposable lighter, out of fuel. A box of condoms dating from some unknown decade. Fangxing glanced at it once and tossed it right back. Enough rations to last 3 days if I rationed strictly. He stowed all supplies neatly and slid back into the driver's seat to examine his so-called only ally. The dashboard flickered to life. The fuel gauge read just under half a tank, enough for roughly 100 more kilometers. He twisted the ignition key once. The engine sputtered and coughed, refusing to turn over. He twisted it a second time and tapped the gas pedal gently at the same moment. Virum. The engine let out an unwilling, guttural roar before settling into a shaky idle. It vibrated roughly, but at least it hadn't stalled out. Fangxing breathed a quiet sigh of relief. If it drove, he had a fighting chance. Comfort, safety, cosmetic condition, those were concerns only after he'd stayed alive. He was about to ease the RV forward when his phone vibrated again. A second system notification popped up. Novice reward issued. Basic supply pack. Collect on the passenger seat. Fangxing turned his head to see a gray canvas bag materializing out of thin air on the empty passenger seat. He unzipped it to find 3 days' worth of fresh emergency rations, no expiration this time. A 20-liter portable fresh water bladder, and a first aid kit stocked with Band-Aids, iodine, gauze, and 2 boxes of antibiotics. It actually hands out supplies. Instead of feeling instant gratitude, Fangxing sorted everything into separate storage spaces. His mind already calculating reserves. 20 liters of water could stretch a full week with careful sipping, 3 days of food. And the medical kit was a lifeline in critical moments. He picked his phone back up and navigated the interface. Apart from the 2 system alerts, a grayed-out tab labeled Rules sat on the screen. Tapping it only displayed a single line. Rules will unlock at the appropriate time. An even fainter, almost illegible tab marked, sat beneath it, unresponsive to taps. Fangxing frowned. His intuition told him the hidden tab held vital information, but he couldn't access it yet. Typical, hiding half the game rules. Whoever designed this setup has 0 sense of customer experience. He slipped his phone into his pocket, shifted into gear, and released the parking brake. The RV rumbled forward unsteadily. The speedometer needle bounced erratically between 20 and 30 kilometers per hour, and the whole frame creaked and groaned over every small pothole, threatening to fall apart at any second. Fangxing grumbled as he steered. The suspension's softer than an elderly woman's arthritic knees. The steering has at least 10 degrees of dead play. And the brake pedal's completely empty for the first half of its travel. If I reviewed this vehicle professionally, I'd give it half a star, maximum. After driving roughly 20 minutes, a gas station came into view, just as dilapidated as his RV. He pulled over to the shoulder, cut the engine, and engaged the handbrake. Perfect spot to scavenge supplies, or a deadly trap. Fangxing recalled all the post-apocalyptic novels he'd read where reckless looters always died first. He grabbed the rusted wrench from the toolbox and clutched it tight, his makeshift weapon. He pushed open the door, gravel crunching beneath his boots. The convenience store attached to the station stood with its front door hanging wide open, pitch black inside. Fangxing didn't rush straight in. He circled the entire building to check for any living, or dead, creatures lingering nearby. To his relief, there was nothing. But he noticed thick black streaks staining the outer wall, stretching from the base of the foundation all the way up to the window frame, as if some viscous liquid had dried there. It wasn't blood, which dried dark red. This substance was jet black with an oily sheen. He knelt down to examine the stain and sniffed cautiously, a rot stench 10 times stronger than the faint odor hanging in the open wasteland. Fangxing stood back up, tightening his grip on the wrench. He stepped into the convenience store. Several shelves had toppled over, littering the floor with crumpled snack bags, discarded drink bottles, and dried residue from unknown spilled liquids. Fangxing scanned the space quickly. Almost all edible goods were gone. What little remained was either crushed to dust or covered in mold. Beneath the cashier's counter, he found 2 unopened bottles of mineral water and a functional lighter with fuel still inside. Score. He stuffed the loot into his backpack and prepared to leave, when a flash of paper taped to the wall beside the register caught his eye. It was a hand-drawn map, messy and lopsided, but marked with surrounding terrain features. A circle was drawn 30 kilometers northeast of the gas station, annotated with 3 characters, transfer station. Fangxing pulled out his phone and snapped a photo of the map. His phone vibrated again the instant he finished. Third system notification. Exploration activity detected. Time remaining until the first natural disaster, 68 hours. It is recommended you upgrade your RV as soon as possible. Current RV tier, E, starting tier. Materials required for upgrades can be scavenged from abandoned vehicles and derelict buildings. Additional warning. Before the natural disaster strikes, zombie activity in this zone will gradually increase. Maintain a night watch. Fangxing's eyelid twitched at the word zombies. Zombies? He muttered quietly. The Walking Dead kind? No voice answered him. But the black stains on the convenience store wall, the deep claw marks on the wrecked sedan's door, and the suffocating silence of the wasteland all clicked into place in his mind. Fangxing drew a deep breath and turned to exit, only to freeze mid-step. A human figure darted past the glass storefront window. He clamped the wrench harder to his chest, pressed his back flat against the interior wall, and peered sideways outside. The figure had vanished, but fresh footprints marred the dirt ground. They weren't his, the disturbed soil crisp and new. Beside the prints dragged long scrapes, as if something heavy had been hauled off the highway and into the tall, overgrown grass. Someone had been following him. Or more accurately, someone had set their sights on his functional RV. Fangxing ducked low, slipped out through the store's back exit, and took a wide detour to circle back to his vehicle. He scrambled into the driver's seat, fired up the engine, and slammed his foot down on the gas without a second thought. No concern for beating up the worn engine this time. The motor let out a deep roar as the RV lurched forward at speed. Glancing in the rearview mirror, he spotted the figure. A man wearing a dark jacket stood motionless at the convenience store entrance, an iron pipe gripped in one hand, staring blankly as Fangxing drove away. Fresh, deep claw cuts sliced across the man's face, stretching from his left temple down to his jawline. The blood crusted dark brown and dry. Fangxing didn't ease off the throttle until the man shrank into a tiny speck in the distance. Then he slowly exhaled a shaky breath. Only day one, and people are already out to rob me. He glanced at the supply pack on the passenger seat, then at the flickering low fuel warning light on the dashboard. This game's 100% a real-life death match, no doubt about it. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, wasteland wind whipping his hair back from his forehead. His phone screen flickered once. Time remaining until the first natural disaster, 67 hours. And he still had no clue what catastrophe awaited him. Fangxing tossed the phone face down on the dashboard and lit a cigarette he'd swiped from the convenience store. He rarely smoked, but nicotine calmed his nerves far better than any empty pep talk right now. Thin smoke drifted upward through the hole punched through the RV's roof. Stay alive, that's the only win condition, he told himself. He glanced back in the rearview mirror. The dilapidated gas station had already vanished over the horizon. But that figure, the man with the iron pipe and claw-scarred face, lingered sharp in his mind like a splinter he couldn't pull free. Fangxing stubbed out the cigarette, shifted gears, and gradually increased his speed to 60 kilometers per hour. A long stretch of highway still lay ahead of him, and the countdown timer for the first wave of natural disasters ticked away, second by second. Far down at the bottom of his phone screen, that faint gray tab flickered for a split second. Fangxing didn't notice. Fangxing rumbled along the empty highway in his broken-down RV for roughly an hour without uncovering a single valuable resource. Wrecked sedans dotted the roadside every few hundred meters, but 2 separate scavenging trips yielded nothing more than a dead cell phone and half a bottle of windshield washer fluid left to rot for God knew how long. On his second trip out, he'd accidentally smeared thick, black, greasy muck all over his palms and burned through 3 paper towels scrubbing it off. Whoever designed this game's loot economy didn't put an ounce of thought into it, Fangxing grumbled as he wiped his hands clean. Half an hour of digging around for absolutely nothing. If this were an online game, I'd uninstall it instantly. But this was no online game. The man with the iron pipe hadn't reappeared in his rearview mirror. Yet Fangxing's guard was maxed out. He kept the toolbox within arm's reach, the rusted wrench resting openly on the passenger seat. If Jiang once saw him leaving tools scattered like this, he'd lecture him for having zero respect for equipment. But there was no one else around to judge him now. He could place his weapons wherever he pleased. His phone vibrated once more. Fourth system notification, basic survival guide unlocked. Please read thoroughly. Fangxing steered with one hand, and unlocked his screen with the other. This message was far longer than the previous alerts, formatted as a numbered list. Excerpt from Basic Survival Guide. 1. The highway stretches infinitely forward, with uncharted territory waiting to be explored ahead. There is no point turning back. Nothing exists behind you. A catastrophic natural disaster will be forced upon all survivors every 72 hours. Disaster types are randomized, and difficulty rises the longer you stay alive. Countdown to the first disaster. 66 hours remaining. Wrecked vehicles, supply caches, and survivor camps spawn randomly along the roadside. Spawn rate correlates with travel speed. The faster you drive, the more locations appear. Your RV is your core asset. Current tier. E. Starting tier. Upgrades unlock new functional features. All upgrade materials must be scavenged manually. Upon surviving 30 consecutive days, you may enter a transfer station to rest for 7 days. Trading, intelligence gathering, and teammate recruitment are available within transfer station boundaries. The first transfer station lies approximately 300 kilometers ahead. 6. Death is permanent, no revives. Good luck. Zombie briefing. Common F-tier zombies inhabit this zone. They move slowly but possess acute hearing and travel in packs. Their activity surges dramatically after dark and in the 12 hours preceding a natural disaster. Avoid direct combat whenever possible. Prioritize escaping by vehicle. The final line was bolded and printed in bright red text for emphasis. Fang Xing stared at the word zombies for 3 full seconds, then flipped his phone face down onto the dashboard with a blank expression. Good luck, huh? Nice touch. He let out a dry, bitter laugh. This system's colder than my ex-girlfriend. At least she apologized when we broke up. Though he mocked the message aloud, his mind raced non-stop to formulate a plan. 60 hours until the first disaster hits. Zombie activity would steadily rise before then. That man covered in claw marks from the gas station. Those gashes didn't look like human fingernail wounds. More like lacerations torn by some kind of clawed beast. Fang Xing cut off the train of thought before he could spiral further. First priority, upgrade the RV. He settled on his core strategy. At minimum, I need this wreck to hold up better against attacks. The system had stated upgrade materials could be salvaged from abandoned cars and derelict buildings. Fang Xing's gaze swept the roadside. Could he strip usable parts from the wrecked sedans he'd passed earlier? He recalled the 2 vehicles he'd checked. The first was an older Jetta with its engine block still intact. Plenty of salvageable components. The second a minivan with decent tire tread, if the size matched his RV's wheels. Fang Xing hit the brakes and executed a U-turn back along the highway. That was his way of handling trouble. Never reckless, never cowardly. Any free resources he could circle back for were never left behind. He pried open the Jetta's engine hood with the wrench, straining with all his strength to pop the rusted latch. The engine block inside had long since cooled, but he had no intention of hauling the entire motor. He wasn't building a brand new car from scratch. His target was the alternator and lead-acid battery. Old Jetta alternators are built tough. I can use it as a backup power source, Fang Xing muttered as he unscrewed bolts. Grease smearing thick across his knuckles. No telling how much charge the battery still holds. But it's worth hauling just in case it's functional. Dismantling car parts was second nature to him. Back when he ran his modification shop, he'd torn apart more vehicles than he could count. An obvious exaggeration, of course. He wasn't a camel hoarding salt. 15 minutes later, he successfully detached the alternator and battery. On a whim, he also stripped a length of cooling piping, several spare bolts, and 2 relatively intact seat covers to use as rags. He cradled his salvage and turned to walk back to the RV when a faint crunch sound reached his ears. Like something brittle being crushed underfoot. Fang Xing froze mid-step, but didn't spin around. He carried all the parts back into the RV's rear compartment, acting completely unperturbed, then slipped the wrench from the toolbox and tucked it up his sleeve. He knelt down pretending to inspect the left rear tire, his peripheral vision locking onto the source of the noise. 30 meters away, behind the highway guardrail, a figure crouched low to the ground. It wasn't the pipe-wielding man from the gas station. This person was noticeably shorter, wearing a hooded sweatshirt with the hood pulled tight over their head, concealing their face entirely. Judging by their frame, it was a young woman. Fang Xing did not walk straight over. He stood up, brushed the dust off his knees, and spoke in a casual, laid-back tone. "You squatting over there, aren't your legs going numb?" No reply came. "All my supplies are gone, and this vehicle's falling apart at the seams. If you're here to rob me, head to the gas station up ahead first. There's a guy there with an iron pipe, and he's clearly got plenty of practice at this line of work." Fang Xing kept talking, sounding like he was chatting with an old friend. If you just want a ride, sorry, this van's already over capacity with 2 people on board. The hooded figure stirred. The person stood upright, and a young face peeked out from under the cap. Definitely a woman, around 22 or 23 years old. Her skin was ashen pale, lips cracked and parched, dark purple circles ringed her eyes, as if she hadn't eaten or slept for days on end. She stared at Fang Xing, her lips trembling slightly, voice hoarse and raspy. "Do you have anything to eat?" Fang Xing sized her up for 3 full seconds. "I do," he said, "but you have to answer 3 questions first. 1. Are you alone? 2. Where did you come from? 3. What have you run into these past few days?" The girl bit her lower lip, hesitating over whether to tell the truth. "I'm by myself," she finally said, her voice still rough. "I woke up out on this highway, with an RV parked beside me, even more beat up than mine. I drove it for 2 days, and the day before yesterday, I ran into a swarm of something. Black flying creatures ripped the roof clean off my vehicle. I drove it straight into a ditch just to escape them." Her voice began to shake as she recounted the ordeal. Fang Xing noticed her pupils dilate faintly when she mentioned black flying creatures. A genuine, unfeigned reaction of terror, not a fabricated lie. "And then what?" Fang Xing pressed. "Then I walked along this highway for 2 whole days. I haven't had a bite to eat. And my water ran out ages ago." The girl lifted her head, eyes glistening red. "When I spotted your RV, I just thought I'd ask for a little food. I'm really not a bad person." Fang Xing fell silent for several seconds. 2 conflicting voices warred inside his head. One reminded him, never trust anyone in the apocalypse. That's the first rule you learn from day 1. The other countered, she's practically at death's door. If you leave her here, there'll just be another corpse rotting by the road tomorrow. He settled on a middle ground. Fang Xing retrieved a bottle of water and half a pack of compressed biscuits from the RV, set them on the ground roughly 5 meters away from the girl, then stepped back 3 paces. "Eat." The girl froze for a split second, then practically threw herself forward. She twisted open the water bottle and chugged several big gulps, coughing violently from swallowing too fast, before tearing open the biscuit packaging and devouring the food ravenously. Watching her wolf down the rations, Fang Xing suddenly thought the scene resembled those wildlife feeding footage clips he'd watched on video platforms. "Slow down. Don't choke to death." He paused briefly. "And don't blame me if you do." The girl glanced up to glare at him, but half-chewed biscuits filled her mouth, robbing the stare of all its bite. "What's your name?" Fang Xing asked. Su Muing." The girl swallowed the last mouthful of biscuit, her voice a little less scratchy now. Fang Xing nodded, but did not offer his own name. It wasn't out of stinginess. He hadn't yet decided whether to team up with her long-term. After finishing the half-pack of biscuits, Su Muing visibly perked up. She wiped crumbs from her mouth and looked over at Fang Xing, her gaze far clearer than before. "Are you a mechanic?" She glanced at the smudges of engine oil coating his hands, then at the loose vehicle parts stacked beside the RV. "Sort of," Fang Xing gave a vague answer. "What about you? What did you do before all this?" "A programmer," Su Muing replied. "I worked for a drone company writing code." Fang Xing raised an eyebrow. "A programmer? One of the most useless professions in the end times. Unless you could write a script that made zombies vanish of their own accord." But he kept the thought to himself. When someone was starving half to death, mocking their career skills was no different from kicking a dog already lying wounded on the ground. "Where's your RV?" Fang Xing asked. Su Muing gestured down the highway ahead. "About 5 kilometers forward, flipped into a ditch." "Is it still drivable?" "The roof's completely gone. What do you think?" "Fair point." A stretch of silence passed between them. Su Muing spoke up out of the blue. "Can you give me a lift? Just to the transfer station up ahead. I can work for you. Your wiring's a total mess. I could rewire the whole system neatly." Fang Xing glanced at the jumble of exposed wiring inside his RV. He knew full well it was a tangled disaster. "How can you tell my wiring's messed up?" Su Muing said flatly. "Your headlights have been flickering nonstop this whole time. Either there's a loose connection, or your RV's haunted. I'm betting on the wiring issue." Fang Xing opened his mouth to retort, yet realized he had no counter-argument. He thought it over, then held up one finger. "1-day trial period. If you just mooch food and rides without pulling your weight, you get out at the next stop. If you prove useful, we'll talk once we hit the transfer station." Su Muing agreed without a moment's hesitation. "Deal." She walked over, pulled open the passenger door, and climbed into the front seat. She picked up the wrench lying there, examined it briefly, then set it neatly into the cup holder. Fang Xing stared at the perfectly aligned wrench, his eye twitching involuntarily. "You even have to line up your wrench perfectly? Proper tool etiquette is basic common sense." Su Muing fastened her seatbelt. "If you leave a wrench loose on the passenger seat, It'll go flying and smash your face the second you slam on the brakes. Did that never cross your mind? Fangxing stayed quiet for 3 full seconds, then uttered a single word slowly. Let's go. The RV sputtered back to life, its engine letting out its usual strained groan. Su Muing frowned slightly, but said nothing. Fangxing checked the rearview mirror. Where Su Muing had squatted earlier, crumbs of compressed biscuit and damp water stains dotted the pavement. The wilderness wind swept the tiny crumbs away down the endless highway. He turned his gaze back to Su Muing beside him. She'd already closed her eyes, her breathing evening out gently, as if she'd finally found a temporary safe haven. Fangxing said nothing, easing his driving pace to make the ride smoother. His phone vibrated. A fifth system notification popped up on the screen. Survivor team formation detected. Current team size, 2. Team mode unlocked. All scavenged resources receive a system bonus. 2-person search efficiency increased by 10. Reminder, trust is the rarest resource in the apocalypse. Handle it with care. Fangxing stared at the message, then glanced over at sleeping Su Muing. Trust? He muttered under his breath. I've known her less than 20 minutes. Haven't even seen her ID card, and you're going on about trust? He flipped the phone face down on the dashboard, shifted gears, and held a steady 50 kilometers per hour. A road sign gradually came into view up the highway. It read, Transfer Station 298 kilometers. Meanwhile, the countdown timer ticked downward minute by minute from 66 hours. What Fangxing did not know was that 5 kilometers away, inside the wrecked RV abandoned in the ditch, a laptop remained powered on. Its screen glowed with endless lines of incomprehensible code. Those lines of code were attempting to crack the fundamental rules governing this broken world. Beneath the phone's screen, the gray tab marked, flickered once more. This time, Fangxing caught the flash. He furrowed his brow, but had no time to investigate. Up ahead, a dark shape lay sprawled across the asphalt, looking like the carcass of some large animal. Fangxing slowed the RV and swerved to drive around it. In the rearview mirror, a single finger belonging to that carcass twitched. Su Muing slept for roughly 40 minutes. Fangxing did not wake her, even deliberately dropping his speed to 40 kilometers per hour to avoid every deep pothole along the road. It wasn't that he'd suddenly turned into a thoughtful nice guy. Simply put, if the newly recruited programmer jolted awake from rough driving, she'd almost certainly complain he handled the RV like a tractor, and he had no desire to get chewed out on their first day together. Still, he didn't idle away the time. With Su Muing asleep, Fangxing set about thoroughly inspecting the beat-up RV. He'd only given it a quick once-over back at the gas station, but now that he had a trial crew member on board, he needed to make sure the vehicle wouldn't fall apart mid-journey at any second. It was a professional habit ingrained deep in him. 6 years working as an automotive review blogger had conditioned him to assess any vehicle the moment he stepped inside. Even the end times hadn't broken that instinct. He steadied the steering wheel with his left hand, using his right to rummage across the dashboard and center console. A paper owner's manual sat tucked inside the glove box, a genuine antique in this collapsed era. He flipped it open. The RV model was the Fayuet 2008, a brand he'd never even heard of. Fayuet Leap? Leap straight to the scrapyard, more like it. Fangxing grumbled and flipped to the vehicle specifications page. Engine, 1.9L naturally aspirated diesel, horsepower unlisted. But judging by the violent shaking, roughly equivalent to an old farm tractor. Transmission, 5-speed manual, absurdly long gear throws. Second and fourth gears, often misaligned. Chassis, body on frame construction, extent of rust on the support beams unknown. Fuel range, tank rated for 70 liters, fuel gauge faulty. Real usable capacity, only about 80% of the label. Vehicle class, grade E, truly the worst of the worst junk. He tossed the manual back into the glove box and checked the dashboard warning lights. The check engine lamp glowed steadily. He'd noticed this earlier. Almost certainly a faulty oxygen sensor, nothing that would halt short-distance travel. There was no tire pressure monitoring system, so he could only judge tire condition by feel. The rear left tire was low on air, but still serviceable for the time being. The brake fluid warning light stayed off, meaning the braking system held for now. The biggest trouble spot was the hole torn through the roof. Fangxing glanced upward at the fist-sized gash. Sunlight streamed through, casting a round bright patch on the RV floor. If rain hit, water would pour straight into the cabin. Soak the control panel, short out the wiring, and turn this vehicle into nothing more than scrap metal for good. I need something to patch this up. He scanned the cabin, finding no suitable materials. His toolbox held electrical tape, but it wasn't waterproof. A metal radiator pipe salvaged from a Jetta sat in the rear compartment, yet it was designed to hold coolant and couldn't serve as a repair patch. Su Muing shifted suddenly. Her eyes stayed shut, but she curled inward slightly, folding both arms tight across her chest. Fang Xing spotted dried dark red residue crusted beneath her fingernails, not blood, more like the sap of some wild plant. Were plants even still growing in the wasteland? He couldn't be certain. He chose not to ask. Everyone carried untold burdens and unspoken stories in the apocalypse, himself included. After another 10 minutes of driving, a fork split the highway ahead. The left branch was a smoother main road, while the right was a worn, cracked side lane with an abandoned box truck parked along its shoulder. Fang Xing hesitated 2 seconds, then flicked the right turn signal, though the light bulb was burnt out. Only the lever moved before steering onto the side road. The box truck was larger than he'd expected, a white Iveco emblazoned with the SF Express Courier logo. Its side cargo door hung wide open, parcels strewn all over the metal floor inside. Fang Xing pulled the RV alongside it and cut the engine. Su Muing opened her eyes. "We're here." Her voice still thick with drowsiness. "Hardly. See that truck over there? Go rummage through it. Look for anything usable." Su Muing rubbed her eyes and followed his pointing finger. The Iveco's front cab had crashed into a guardrail, crumpling the driver's side door, yet the main body remained mostly intact. "What exactly are we looking for?" she asked. "First, something to patch the roof hole. Second, food supplies. Third, extra tools." Fang Xing had already climbed out of the RV, his voice carrying from outside. "Last, anything valuable, assuming currency still means anything in this wasteland." Su Muing rolled her eyes. Fang Xing couldn't see it, and even if he had, he wouldn't have cared. She pushed open the passenger door and followed him over. As they neared the Iveco, a powerful stench of rot washed over them, far stronger than the odor lingering at the gas station. Su Muing wrinkled her nose and stepped half a pace backward. Fang Xing did not flinch. He hauled open the driver's door, which screeched with harsh metal friction as rusted hinges protested the movement. No one sat in the seat, but wide swathes of dried blood stained the upholstery, stretching all the way to the steering wheel. The blood pattern looked unnatural, not splatter from a wound, but drag marks, as if something had dragged the driver bodily out of the cab. "The driver's long gone," Fang Xing said flatly, scanning every corner of the cockpit. A phone mount stuck to the center console, but the phone itself was missing. The glove box hung ajar, shipping invoices scattered across the floor. Fang Xing picked one up to glance at it, a delivery slip addressed to a neighboring province, dated roughly 1 week before the Great Rift disaster. The world's ended, and this package still never got delivered. He crumpled the slip and tossed it aside. "I'd leave a terrible 1-star review for this." He searched the entire cab and collected a handful of loot. An unopened pack of tissues, a lighter still full of fuel, half a bottle of windshield washer fluid, and a crowbar. An excellent find, far more versatile than his wrench. Meanwhile, Su Muing searched the cargo hold. "Fang Xing," she called out abruptly. "What's up?" Fang Xing poked his head around the cab door. "Come look at this." Fang Xing walked over carrying the crowbar. Su Muing stood in the middle of the cargo bay, several torn open parcels scattered at her feet. She held a silver roll of something in her hand, and when Fang Xing drew closer, he recognized it at once. A roll of heavy-duty aluminum foil tape. The industrial waterproof, heat-insulating tape designed specifically for vehicle body repairs. 10 centimeters wide, its silver surface glinting in the sunlight. Holy hell! Fang Xing's eyes widened. This is a lifesaver. He took the roll and tugged a length free. The adhesive held fiercely, and the tape had excellent tensile strength. It was the perfect material to seal the hole in the RV roof. "Did you dig this up?" Fang Xing asked. Su Muing replied impassively. "Didn't you need to fix the roof? This should work." "Work? It's perfect." A genuine rare smile tugged at Fang Xing's lips. "Your trial performance is outstanding. We can talk making this permanent." Su Muing ignored his joke and kept sorting through the remaining parcels. She uncovered 2 more packs of compressed biscuits, a full bottle of mineral water, a roll of regular clear tape, and a portable power bank with 0 charge left, still worth holding onto for later use. Deep in the cargo hold, Fang Xing found an even bigger haul, a complete toolbox, far larger than his own, stocked with full socket wrench sets, screwdrivers, pliers, a hammer, even a utility knife and spare replacement blades. Score of a lifetime. He lifted the heavy toolbox and hefted its weight. This would have gone for at least 300 yuan on Taobao before the end times. The two carried all their scavenged goods back to the RV. Fang Xing's first order of business wasn't sorting supplies. It was climbing into the driver's seat, poking half his torso through the sunroof, and sealing the roof gash with the aluminum foil tape. He layered 3 thick strips, pressing each edge down firmly to create an airtight, waterproof seal. When he finished, he splashed a little water over the patch to test it. All liquid ran down the exterior roof without seeping inside the cabin. All fixed, Fangxing ducked back into the RV and brushed dust off his palms. Rain's no longer a problem now. Su Muing sat in the passenger seat, watching his hands coated in grime and sticky tape residue, and frowned. Don't touch the dashboard with those dusty hands. Fangxing fell silent. Also, could you do something about that motor oil reek clinging to you? Su Muing continued, her tone identical to a colleague running a work meeting. The RV's ventilation system is already garbage, and you're polluting the whole cabin single-handedly. Fangxing drew a deep breath. This woman had been with him less than an hour, and she was already nagging him about being dirty. Su Muing. He spoke her full name. Let me remind you, the RV you're sitting in is something I salvaged. The biscuits you ate were mine to give. The water bottle in your hand is also my supply. So what? Su Muing raised an eyebrow. So could you possibly? Fangxing paused, softening his tone slightly. Slide the passenger seat forward a little? You've reclined it so far back there's no leg room for anyone sitting behind you. Su Muing glanced down at the seat's position, stayed quiet for 2 seconds, then reached out and shifted it forward a notch. Fine, she said simply. Fangxing said nothing more and started the engine. The RV let out an ugly rumble before rolling back onto the highway. He glanced in the rearview mirror. The white Iveco shrank smaller and smaller, vanishing entirely over the distant horizon. His phone vibrated again. 6th system notification appeared on screen, scavenging complete. Loot acquired. Aluminum foil tape ×1, complete toolbox ×1. Compressed biscuits ×2, mineral water ×1, portable power bank ×1. All resources added to team shared inventory. Current RV durability, 52. Recommend upgrading to grade D as soon as possible to unlock full vehicle repair functions. Time remaining until first natural disaster strike, 63 hours. Fangxing stared at the 52 durability readout, his mouth twitching. Less than half intact, this broken-down vehicle was worse off than his pre-apocalypse credit score. Su Muing had also seen the notification. She remained quiet a moment before speaking. Your RV's durability is only half. Yep. Do you know what this means? That the vehicle's gonna fall apart any second? No. Su Muing rarely spoke to him with such earnestness. It means you're a terrible driver. Half the reason the durability's dropping so fast is you never slowed down over potholes. Fangxing opened his mouth, ready to fire back a retort, yet he found her logic unarguable. He really hadn't bothered swerving around ruts or easing off the gas when hitting uneven ground. He took a deep breath and decided to switch topics. Can you drive? He asked. Su Muing shook her head. No driver's license. A programmer without a license? Doesn't your company do self-driving road trips for team building? I write code. I'm not a chauffeur. She paused. Also, I get carsick. Fangxing nearly choked on his own breath at that line. Carsick? A person prone to motion sickness stuck riding a beat-up RV in the apocalypse, traveling down a highway that stretched on endlessly? He slowly turned his head and stared at her with a look that plainly said, "Are you joking with me?" Su Muing stared straight ahead, her face blank. Watch the road. Fangxing faced forward again, his hands trembling slightly on the steering wheel, not out of fear, but sheer exasperation. Fine. He ground out through clenched teeth. Perfect. A brief, heavy silence settled inside the vehicle. Outside the windows, the scenery repeated on an endless loop of barren wasteland and asphalt highway. A withered tree flashed past the roadside every now and then. A handful of crows flew overhead now and again. The sky darkened, not from evening twilight, but from heavy storm clouds rolling in from the distance, blotting out all sunlight. Fangxing frowned. The weather forecasting system hadn't warned him of rain, yet he could smell dampness thick in the air. It's going to pour, he said. Su Muing glanced out the window. Don't you have windshield wipers? I do, but the rubber blades are worn out. They leave streaks everywhere. What's your plan then? Drive through until the rain stops. That's your solution? It's an apocalypse solution, Fangxing said solemnly. Either the rain lets up, or I stop the car. Su Muing said nothing in reply. She glanced down at the countdown timer on her phone. 62 hours and 48 minutes remaining. Then she lifted her gaze back to the storm clouds outside. The clouds loomed closer now, deeper charcoal gray, spreading across the horizon like a heavy gray quilt smothering the sky. Humidity spiked, temperatures plummeted, and wild grass along the roadside bent flat beneath the wind. Fangxing flipped on the wipers. Just as he'd feared, they failed to clear the glass, leaving messy streaks of water streaking across the windshield. First mechanical flaw of many Mercedes, Su Muing commented flatly, eyeing the smudged glass. Literally every part of this vehicle's falling apart. You're only just noticing? Fang Xing's tone matched her unruffled calm. I thought you'd spotted every issue the minute you climbed aboard. Their eyes met for a split second. Su Muing looked away first. There's an underpass 2 kilometers ahead. You can pull in there to shelter from the storm. Fang Xing followed the direction she'd gestured toward. Sure enough, an abandoned overpass arched over the highway with a hollow space beneath large enough to fit 2 vehicles. How do you know there's an underpass there? Fang Xing asked. I saw it before I fell asleep. Su Muing said. I paid attention to the road while you drove. Unlike some people, who just zone out staring at the asphalt ahead. Fang Xing chose to take that as a compliment. At the very least, she'd acknowledged he'd been watching the road instead of scrolling on his phone. He pressed down on the gas, and the RV accelerated toward the underpass. The rain began to fall. First a few scattered drops, then dozens, then a torrential wall of water pouring from the sky. The wipers completely gave out, turning the windshield into a blurred sheet of rain. Fang Xing was practically driving blind. Su Muing's voice cut through the downpour beside him. Turn left a little, more left, straight ahead, 50 meters, we're here. Fang Xing hit the brakes, and the RV slid to a stop beneath the concrete overpass. The solid bridge deck sheltered them overhead, while sheets of rain cascaded down both sides of the underpass, forming a natural waterfall curtain. Fang Xing cut the engine, leaned back against his seat, and exhaled a long, weary breath. The underpass was dim, only a small stretch illuminated by the RV's headlights. Rain hammered relentlessly against the bridge overhead, the roar loud as 10,000 people clapping directly above their heads. Thanks, Fang Xing said. Su Muing shot him a glance. For what? For guiding me here. No need. Her voice was soft. I hate getting soaked. Another stretch of silence passed. Fang Xing spoke abruptly. Before today, you were behind the wheel for 2 days straight. MHM. You just said you get carsick. I get motion sickness as a passenger, not as a driver. A hint of impatience edged her tone. Sickness as a rider and ability to drive are 2 separate things. Some people drive for hours while throwing up the whole way and still reach their destination. Fang Xing pictured that gruesome scene, and nausea twisted his stomach. I'll stick to driving then, he said. You just navigate. Su Muing raised no objection. The rain intensified, and the sound of water pooling on the underpass floor grew louder and more constant. Fang Xing pulled out his phone and checked the system notifications. No new alerts. The countdown ticked onward, with no telling when the storm would pass. He was about to close his eyes and rest for a moment when a shadow caught the edge of his headlights out of the corner of his eye. It wasn't the silhouette of a tree or a bridge pillar. It was the shape of a person. Fang Xing's body tensed instantly. He reached into the tool compartment and closed his hand around a utility knife. Su Muing, he whispered, quiet enough only for the 2 of them to hear. Don't turn around. Su Muing's breath hitched. 11 o'clock, straight out the front of the vehicle. Fang Xing continued, his voice lowered to a murmur. There's someone standing there. The figure remained perfectly motionless through the sheets of rain. Yet Fang Xing spotted something off about its outline. The width from shoulder to crown was nearly half again broader than a normal human's. Sweat beaded in his palms. He slowly pushed open the RV door and stepped outside. The thunderous rain swallowed the sound of his footsteps. He circled around to the front of the vehicle, the utility knife hidden up his sleeve, his gaze locked unblinkingly on the shadow. He drew closer. It was a woman, drenched head to toe, her long hair plastered across her face, hiding her features completely. She wore dark clothing, her hands hanging limp at her sides, no weapon visible in her grasp. But deeper back into the shadowed underpass behind her, more silhouettes lingered. Shorter, smaller shapes, crouched low to the ground. Fang Xing halted 3 meters away from her. Who are you? He asked. The woman slowly lifted her head, rainwater streaming down her cheeks. She parted her lips, her voice hoarse, barely audible over the downpour. Do you have any food? Fang Xing did not answer immediately. His eyes swept over every inch of her frame. No obvious open wounds, no bloodstains, yet her stance was unnatural. Weight shifted heavily onto her left leg, as if her right throbbed with unrelenting pain. Worse still, the fingers on her left hand twitched faintly. Not the nervous fidgeting of a scared person, but involuntary, spasmodic jerks. He'd read this exact symptom in the system's file on infected creatures, a telltale sign of early-stage contamination. Fang Xing took 1 step backward. Your leg's injured? His tone turned far colder than before. The woman nodded. Su Muing had climbed out of the RV without him noticing, standing 2 meters behind him. A pipe wrench clutched in her hands, not raised to strike, held in a defensive ready stance. Fang Xing glanced at the woman, then at the small, hunched shadows deep in the underpass behind her. The rain kept falling. The gurgle of pooling water echoed louder in the hollow space, like a ticking countdown. His phone vibrated once inside his pocket. He didn't pull it out to check, yet he knew exactly what alert had popped up, a warning that infected creature activity levels were spiking. Because the woman standing 3 meters before him was twitching her fingers faster and faster by the second. Fang Xing held off on responding. Rain reverberated off the underpass walls like a giant drum being beaten non-stop. The woman 3 meters away stood soaked through, her dark clothes clinging tight to a gaunt frame. Her right leg bent slightly, all her weight resting on her left. The injury was clearly severe. Yet Fang Xing's attention was fixed not on her leg, but her hands. Her left index and middle fingers jerked involuntarily every few seconds, muscles contracting out of her control. The system's documentation on infected creatures stated clear early-stage markers: limb spasms, slow pupil light response, lowered body temperature. Fang Xing couldn't confirm if she was contaminated, but he had no intention of gambling with their lives to find out. Food. Fang Xing repeated her question, his voice flat and emotionless, while he subtly edged another half-step backward. The woman nodded, rain dripping off her chin. Su Muing whispered from behind him. Didn't you say earlier never to trust anyone in the apocalypse? Fang Xing didn't turn his head, answering just as softly. I said don't trust people blindly, not that we leave people to die. Besides, she might not even be human anymore. What do you mean? Watch her hands. Su Muing's gaze locked onto the twitching fingers, and her pupils narrowed. She'd also read the system's breakdown of infected creatures. The small, hunched shadows deep in the underpass stayed put, neither drawing closer nor retreating. Fang Xing's headlights couldn't reach that far, only blurry outlines visible. Human-shaped figures crouched low, resembling huddled children, or something that moved on all fours. The woman advancement to pick up on Fang Xing's hesitation and shuffled one unsteady step forward. Her injured right leg dragged against the wet concrete with a squelching scrape. I'm not infected. Her voice was so raspy it was barely intelligible. I got bitten, but not by one of those things. A stray dog, 2 days ago. Fang Xing said nothing, rapidly weighing the odds. If she were fully contaminated, standing out in the rain this long would have completed her transformation already. When Su Muing shone her phone flashlight at her eyes, her pupils constricted, slower than a healthy human's, but still responsive to light. A stray dog bit you? Fang Xing asked. Show me the wound. The woman rolled up the trouser leg on her right calf. A row of shallow puncture marks marked her skin, unmistakably canine. Narrow tooth spacing, no ragged tearing typical of infected bites. If a zombie had attacked her, the wound edges would be black and necrotic, with far wider bite impressions from their crushing jaw strength. Fang Xing relaxed slightly, though he remained on high alert. Get in, he nodded toward the RV. Fair warning, this isn't a 5-star hotel. No hot water, no bathtub, no room service. If the conditions don't suit you, you're welcome to stand out in the rain a while longer. The woman's lips twitched, and she murmured, thank you. She limped toward the RV. Su Muing stepped aside to let her pass, never lowering the pipe wrench in her grip. Fang Xing brought up the rear, the utility knife still hidden up his sleeve, his gaze fixed constantly on the small shadows deep in the underpass. None followed them, yet one shifted faintly, letting out a faint gurgling rumble from deep in its throat. The RV door slammed shut, muffling the roar of the rain. The tiny cabin instantly felt cramped. The 8-square-meter space had barely fit Fang Xing alone. Adding Su Muing left just enough room to turn around. With a third person now aboard, there was scarcely space to rest one's feet. Su Muing slid into the driver's seat, yielding the passenger side to the injured woman. The moment she sat down, all the strength seemed to drain from her body. She leaned back against the seat, closing her eyes, her chest heaving with labored breaths. Fang Xing retrieved a half-empty water bottle and the last compressed ration bar from the storage compartment. Not the stock he'd given Su Muing earlier, one of the basic beginner supplies the system had issued at the very start. He set the items beside her. Eat slowly. Don't choke. The woman opened her eyes, glanced at him, took a small sip of water, then broke the ration bar into tiny crumbs, nibbling them bit by bit. Su Muing twisted around in the driver's seat, staring at Fang Xing with an expression that clearly read, "Are you out of your mind?" Fang Xing shot her a silent look that said, "I know exactly what I'm doing." They exchanged unspoken opposing opinions, neither convincing the other. The woman finished half the ration bar, wrapping the leftover portion and setting it aside. Aren't you going to finish it? Fangxing asked. I'll save it, she rasped. I don't know when I'll get another meal. Fangxing noticed she avoided meeting his eyes as she spoke, staring instead at a dusty, neglected corner of the RV floor. The small detail lessened his wariness a little. Truly greedy people would never hold food back for later. What's your name? Fangxing asked. Lin Xiaohe, the woman replied. Fangxing waited for her to elaborate on her old job, where she'd come from, how she'd ended up stranded here, but after giving her name, Lin Xiaohe fell silent, as if those 3 characters contained all the necessary information. That's all. Fangxing couldn't help but press. That's all. Lin Xiaohe lifted her head to meet his gaze, rain-soaked hair clinging to her cheeks, revealing small yet bright eyes. I'll answer whatever you ask. I won't volunteer anything you don't inquire about. Fangxing stared for a beat, then huffed a quiet laugh. All right, he said. I'll ask. Which direction did you travel here from? The west. What's out west? Roads, endless stretches of road. Lin Xiaohe said. Abandoned vehicles too, but most have already been looted, nothing valuable left. And some, moving creatures. Zombies. Su Muing cut straight to the point. Lin Xiaohe's eyelashes fluttered. I don't know what they're called. Their faces aren't human anymore. Gray skin, milky white eyes, black fluid oozing from their jaws. They chase light and sound. They don't run fast, but there's hundreds of them. Fangxing and Su Muing exchanged a loaded glance. You encountered them? Fangxing pressed. Lin Xiaohe stayed quiet for several seconds, then spoke a line that turned the cabin's atmosphere ice cold. I escaped. Not everyone else did. She offered no further details, yet the sorrow etched across her face told Fangxing everything he needed to know. Just to confirm, your leg wound was from a stray dog, not one of those creatures. Fangxing double-checked. A zombie wouldn't stop after one bite, Lin Xiaohe explained. They tackle you and tear at you non-stop until you kill them. I've seen people attacked by them. Their injuries look nothing like mine. Her reasoning held up, and Fangxing nodded in acknowledgement. The rain gradually lightened. Fangxing checked his phone. The countdown read 61 hours and 12 minutes remaining. A new system alert had popped up while he'd been distracted. Detected low-threat unknown biological signatures within the underpass. Recommended immediate evacuation. Infected creature activity surging. Lingering in open covered spaces overnight drastically increases encounter risk. Fangxing passed the phone to Su Muing to read. After scanning the message, she whispered, those small hunched shapes back there, are they zombies? Possibly, maybe not, Fangxing said. Either way, we need to leave. The rain hasn't stopped yet, Mercedes, Su Muing noted. We're not waiting for it to clear. Fangxing turned the ignition. I'd rather drive through the downpour than stay trapped in an enclosed space with those things lurking nearby. Lin Xiaohe suddenly spoke up. There's an abandoned service station roughly 40 kilometers ahead. Safe to park and rest. I also spotted a discarded fuel tanker near it. There might still be gasoline inside. Most importantly, it's a brick and mortar building. We can lock all the doors and windows, far safer than exposed, open areas. Fangxing raised an eyebrow at her. How do you know all this? For the first time since meeting her, Lin Xiaohe's expression shifted faintly. The corners of her mouth tugged down in a bitter, self-deprecating half-smile, not quite a laugh. I walked 2 full days coming from the west. I memorized every possible resting spot along the way. When I passed the service station, there were no zombies inside. At least not during daylight hours. I can't speak for nighttime. Fangxing weighed the information and made his decision. We're heading for the service station. We'll arrive before dark. The RV pulled out of the underpass, and sheets of rain battered the windshield once more. The wipers were completely useless now, yet Fangxing navigated steadily east along the highway, relying on blurred vision and Lin Xiaohe's constant directions. In the rearview mirror, the concrete underpass shrank further and further away. The small hunched silhouettes never gave chase. They stood rigid at the edge of the underpass, silent spectators watching the lit RV vanish into the gray wall of rain. Sweat soaked Fangxing's palms. He glanced down at his phone. The gray tab marked with 3 question marks flickered once again. This time he was certain he hadn't imagined it. But the countdown timer kept ticking, and he had no spare time to investigate the strange alert. Fangxing drove roughly 10 kilometers before the rain finally died down. The sky remained pitch black, the heavy storm clouds still hanging overhead, but visibility had at least cleared enough to make out the road ahead. His windshield wipers were completely broken. The right wiper arm had bent clean out of shape during the torrential downpour, and a section of rubber had torn off the left blade. Dragging it across the glass only left a thicker, blurrier film behind. I'll need to replace the wipers once we stop somewhere, Fangxing muttered to himself. Stop somewhere. Go back to where? Su Muing's voice came from the passenger seat beside him. Do you mean return to the world before the apocalypse? I meant strip a set from an abandoned vehicle. Oh, a faint, barely detectable note of disappointment laced Su Muing's tone. Fangxing glanced at Lin Xiaohe in the rearview mirror. She leaned back against the seat, eyes half-lidded, her right leg stretched straight out while her left hand rested gently over her wound. She'd dressed the injury after climbing into the van, cleaning it with iodophor and wrapping it with bandages. Her technique was clumsy, yet the fundamentals were correct. Did you learn first aid somewhere? Fangxing asked. Lin Xiaohe opened her eyes. I took an elective wilderness survival course in college. What university even offers that? Agricultural University. Wilderness survival was an optional class. They taught how to find water, start fires, and treat wounds out in the wild. She paused. Never thought I'd actually put it to use. Fangxing nodded. In the apocalypse, every skill had its value. Some of the most seemingly useless ones were the very things that could save your life. Turn right up ahead, there's a side road. Lin Xiaohe spoke up suddenly. I passed by yesterday and spotted a convenience store off the shoulder. I didn't go inside to check it out. Why didn't you head in? My leg hurt, and dusk was falling fast, Lin Xiaohe explained. I didn't dare go into an enclosed space alone. You never know what's waiting inside. It could be supplies, or it could be zombies. Her reasoning made perfect sense. Fangxing nodded and turned onto the side road at the fork. The narrow lane was half the width of the main highway, pockmarked with deep potholes. Wild weeds taller than a person lined both sides, rustling loudly in the night breeze. When the van's headlights swept over the grass, tiny green glints occasionally flashed back at them, the eyes of small animals. Fangxing prayed they were rabbits or rats, not the eyes of the undead. In truth, zombie eyes reflected a dull, off-white glow after dark, entirely distinct from the green sheen of beasts. He'd picked up that detail from the system notifications, and for the first time, he was glad he'd read every single alert thoroughly. After roughly 5 minutes of driving, the convenience store sign came into view. Hoyiduo Convenience Store. 2 characters had fallen off the signboard, leaving only Haoyo and Lidian visible. The neon light box had long since burned out, and a faded poster plastered to the glass entrance was too worn to make out its contents. A large black stain marred the outer wall, identical to the one he'd seen at the first gas station. It spread upward from the base of the wall to the bottom of the windows, dried into a glossy jet black residue. Fangxing's guard shot straight up. He pulled the RV to a stop directly in front of the store, leaving the engine running. The headlights blazed straight at the glass doors, flooding the entire entrance with harsh white light. Same plan as always, he said, yanking the handbrake tight. I'll go in first. You two wait in the vehicle. Su Muing said nothing, but her hand closed firmly around the steel crowbar resting at her feet. Fangxing shot her a sideways glance. You're coming too? 2 people searching will finish faster than 1, Su Muing replied. Plus that utility knife of yours is only good for cutting tape. If we run into trouble, you won't even have time to scream for help. Trouble like zombies? Trouble like zombies. Fangxing opened his mouth to argue, then realized he had no counterpoint. Fine, he conceded. Stay 3 meters behind me at all times. Run without hesitation the second anything looks off. That line's supposed to be mine. Su Muing retorted, pushing open her door and climbing out. Lin Xiaohe watched the pair from the back seat, lips parted as if to say something. But in the end she only spoke quietly. I'll guard the van. Honk the horn if anything goes wrong. If zombies draw near, I'll flash the high beams 3 times. Fangxing gave her an okay hand signal, grabbed the utility knife from the toolbox, and pushed open the convenience store's front door. It was unlocked. More accurately, the lock had been pried open. Fangxing spotted fresh gouge marks along the doorframe. The oxidized metal surface scraped away to reveal shiny silver beneath, meaning the break-in had happened less than a week prior. Beside the pry marks ran several deep claw scratches, not left by metal tools, but by some kind of sharp, jagged appendage. Fangxing's heart skipped a beat, yet he didn't back down. He lightened his footsteps, gripping the utility knife in his right hand while switching on the flashlight on his phone with his left. The store interior was far more chaotic than he'd anticipated. Most of the shelving units had toppled over, littering the floor with snack wrappers, empty beverage bottles, crushed instant noodle packets, and patches of that same dried black viscous residue coating the outer wall, not blood, the strange glossy black fluid. The air reeked of cloying rot mixed with the faint chemical tang of leftover detergent, a sickly, unpleasant odor. Su Muing stayed 3 meters back, crowbar clutched tight in both hands as her gaze swept every shadowed corner. There's something behind the checkout counter, she whispered suddenly. Fangxing followed the line of her gaze. The L-shaped checkout desk pooled with a dark liquid that glowed dull red under the flashlight beam. Blood, and fresh blood at that. The edges hadn't fully congealed, exposed to open air for no more than a few hours. The stain dragged in a long trail stretching from the register all the way toward the warehouse doorway at the back. Someone was injured here. Su Muing lowered her voice. Or dragged away. Fangxing finished her sentence. They locked eyes, then both turned their attention to the half-ajar warehouse door. Darkness pooled inside like thick ink, hiding every detail. Fangxing drew a deep breath and stepped toward the back storage room. He pressed his shoulder flat against the wall and nudged the door open gently with the flat back of his knife. The rusted hinges let out a shrill, grating creak that echoed deafeningly through the silent store. The flashlight beam sliced into the warehouse. Several shelving racks had collapsed, cardboard boxes scattered across the floor. In the far rear corner, a figure wearing a red hoodie knelt with its back to them, shoulders hunching and shuddering repeatedly as if feeding on something. Hey, Fangxing called out. The figure didn't stir. Su Muing tightened her grip on the crowbar, but Fangxing held out an arm to stop her. Something's wrong, he murmured. A normal person would turn around, or at least pause when they hear voices. He aimed the flashlight directly at the back of its head. Thin, matted hair-covered scalp that was ashen gray, faint dark veins visible beneath the skin. No, not veins, a tangled gray-black web of fissures spreading just under the surface. A memory flashed through Fangxing's mind, pulled straight from the system alerts. In late-stage infected zombies, black web-like patterns spread across the scalp as the virus corrodes their nervous system. Fall back, Fangxing ordered without hesitation, grabbing Su Muing's arm and yanking her backward. At that exact moment, the person ceased its movements. Its head twisted slowly around, not a natural turn of the neck, but its entire upper torso swiveling in one rigid motion. The spine letting out a series of dry, cracking pops like dead branches snapping. Its face could barely be called human anymore. Ash-gray skin, rotted lips peeled back to expose dark red gums and yellowed teeth. Its eyes were clouded milky white, no pupils, no focus. Thick black fluid dripped non-stop from the corners of its mouth, pooling beside the bloodstain on the floor. Zombie Mercedes, Su Muing ground the word out between gritted teeth. The zombie opened its jaws and let out a low, gurgling HHRRR rumble from deep in its throat. Then it stood upright. Fangxing spun and ran. Su Muing was faster, already bursting through the warehouse doorway, her crowbar nearly slamming into the doorframe. Fangxing sprinted close behind, the utility knife in his hand utterly useless. He didn't have a split second to think about wielding it. The pair burst out of the convenience store, and Fangxing shouted toward the RV as they ran. Lin Xiaohe, flash the headlights. Flash them 3 times. The RV's high beams flickered 3 rapid bursts of light. The engine roared to life, and the vehicle lurched straight toward the store entrance, its side door already thrown wide open. Fangxing and Su Muing scrambled aboard almost simultaneously. Before Fangxing even settled fully into the driver's seat, he slammed the gearshift into reverse and floored the gas. The RV carved a wide semicircle across the gravel lot, white tire smoke billowing behind them. In the rearview mirror, the red-hooded zombie stood framed in the store's doorway, its milky white eyes fixed on the retreating vehicle, jaws opening and closing in silent, gurgling spasms. Then 2 more figures stumbled out of the store behind it. One wore a faded blue work uniform, the other was bare-chested. Both had the same ashen gray skin and cloudy blank eyes. 3 zombies stood side by side at the entrance, watching the RV vanish into the night. Fangxing cranked the speedometer up to 80 kilometers per hour, only easing off the throttle once the convenience store faded completely from sight. Shit, he swore, his voice trembling slightly. Shit. Su Muing was no better off, her face drained pale, blue veins bulging on her knuckles where she gripped the crowbar. Lin Xiaohe, by contrast, remained calm, simply asking, how many? 3, Fangxing replied. At least 3. We didn't grab any supplies from inside? Lin Xiaohe pressed. We barely escaped with our lives. Forget supplies. Fangxing snapped, then sighed. Though the fact 3 zombies are holed up there means the stockpile's probably still intact. We can come back for it if we get the chance. Su Muing shot him a sharp glare. You want to go back there? I said if we get the chance. If not, forget it. His phone vibrated in his pocket. 7th system notification, first encounter with zombies. F-grade, ordinary zombies, low threat level. Elimination yields a small amount of survival points, which may be exchanged for supplies at transfer stations. Reminder, Zombies are highly sensitive to sound and light sources. Turning off interior cabin lights and reducing engine noise during night travel lowers the chance of detection. Countdown to the first cataclysm. 58 hours remaining. Fangxing scanned the alert and passed the phone to Su Muing. Killing them earns points. Su Muing read the key line aloud. So the system's encouraging us to slay zombies? It's not encouragement, it's just an option, Fangxing explained. You can choose to avoid them entirely or fight them head-on. Win, and you get rewards. Lose, he trailed off, but the unspoken outcome hung heavy in the air for all three of them. Silence settled over the RV for a stretch. Fangxing suddenly remembered a question he'd meant to ask earlier. Lin Xiao, you said you traveled here from the west. Besides zombies, what else did you run into along the road? Lin Xiao thought back. A group of men driving modified pickup trucks, robbing anyone who passes. I hid in a roadside drainage ditch so they didn't spot me. They call themselves the scavengers, claim this entire highway is their territory. Fangxing frowned. Which was more dangerous, zombies or other humans? The undead had no rational thought, but living people could scheme and plot. Humans were 10,000 times more terrifying than zombies in the apocalypse. Got it, he said. If we spot any convoys ahead from now on, we'll detour well in advance. The RV rumbled onward through the darkness, its headlights carving a narrow strip of visibility through the blackness. Far off on the horizon, a pale gray-white glow flickered. No lightning, but a steady, sustained radiance resembling the lights of a pre-collapsed city. But what city still stood illuminated in the apocalypse? Fangxing stared at the strange glow for several seconds before tearing his gaze away. What he failed to notice was the grayed out tab on his phone screen. The moment they'd confronted the zombies in the convenience store, it was no longer dimmed. It had turned a pale golden hue, emblazoned with two simple characters, awaiting activation. Half an hour after Fangxing drove clear of the convenience store zone, another system alert popped up on his phone. 8th system notification. Weather warning. A thunderstorm front detected 30 kilometers ahead, spanning approximately 15 kilometers in width, moderate intensity. Estimated arrival in 25 minutes. Thunderstorm effects. Vehicle electronics will suffer heavy interference, communications disabled, visibility reduced to under 10 meters, road slippage coefficient increased by 200. Reminder, zombie activity is suppressed during thunderstorms. Bright lightning and loud thunder disperse them. However, once the storm passes, zombies will converge en masse toward the storm zone drawn by residual noise. It is strongly advised to vacate the area immediately once the thunderstorm ends. Fangxing read the notice out loud, and Su Muing's brows knitted tight when he reached the line about zombies gathering post-storm. In other words, the second the storm lets up, zombies from every direction will swarm this area, Fangxing paraphrased. I can read. Thank you. Su Muing huffed. Then I won't waste breath explaining it. Fangxing glanced at the fuel gauge. They still had plenty of diesel, but one headlight was dead, and the windshield wipers were completely non-functional. Charging straight into a thunderstorm in this condition was tantamount to suicide. Can we take a detour around it? Su Muing asked. Fangxing pulled up the map on his phone. The system's crude schematic looked like it had been drawn by an elementary school student, only marking major highways and a handful of landmarks. Lin Xiaohe leaned forward from the back seat to peer at the screen, pointing to a thin, faint side road line. This fork road bypasses the storm core. I've traveled it before. It adds 20 kilometers to the route, but it'll keep us out of the worst of the thunderstorm. What's the road surface like? Gravel, with one steep uphill stretch, but your RV has enough power to climb it. Fangxing shot a glance at Lin Xiaohe. The woman's memory for routes was as precise as a GPS. In the apocalypse, that skill was far more valuable than knowing how to fire a gun. We'll take the side road. He flipped on the right turn signal. Though the right bulb was burnt out, the left one still worked, enough to signal his intent. The side road was every bit as rough as expected. The gravel, soaked soft by rain, sent the RV's tires slipping constantly. Fangxing had to feather the gas pedal carefully, never hitting it too hard or easing off too much. Su Muing sat in the passenger seat, scrolling through the offline map on her phone. Cell service was long gone, but the downloaded route data still functioned. Turn right 500 meters ahead. Su Muing read off the navigation. The right's a river bank. Fangxing nodded toward the window. The map says it's a road. The map also claims our current elevation is 3,000 meters. Does this look like a mountain plateau to you? Su Muing fell silent for 2 beats. No, it doesn't. A soft laugh escaped Lin Xiaohe in the back, the first genuine sound of amusement she'd made since boarding the vehicle. Fangxing ignored the navigation's faulty instruction and continued straight. After roughly a kilometer, A genuine right-turn side road came into sight. The navigation had skewed wildly due to satellite signal disruption from the incoming thunderstorm. How did you know the map was wrong? Su Muing asked. Driver's intuition, Fangxing replied simply. Su Muing said nothing more, but the way she looked at him afterward held a subtle new layer of respect. The low rumble of distant thunder rolled toward them. It wasn't ordinary thunder, an ear-splitting metallic crack tearing open the sky. Deep, continuous booms, as if someone dragged 10,000 tons of iron chains overhead. Through the windshield, Fangxing watched the sky ahead bleed a murky ash-purple, storm clouds hanging so low they nearly brushed the asphalt. This isn't a normal thunderstorm, Lin Xiaohe said evenly from the back seat. Is this the cataclysm the system warned us about? No, Fangxing checked the countdown timer. We still have over 50 hours until the first cataclysm hits. This is just the warm-up. The warm-up's this violent, Su Muing muttered. Fangxing offered no reply. He dropped his speed to 40 kilometers per hour, his full focus locked on the uneven gravel road stretching ahead. The lane terminated at a steep 15-degree uphill slope, rainwater carving deep, winding gullies across its surface like the tracks of a giant centipede. The RV began its climb. The engine strained with a ragged, laborious roar, the tachometer needle bouncing wildly around the 3,000 RPM mark. Fangxing neither lifted his foot off the gas nor pressed harder, holding the pedal at a steady depth to let the engine settle into its peak torque band for stable ascent. It was a trick he'd picked up testing heavy-duty trucks back before the collapse. Flooring the gas while hauling a heavy load uphill accomplished nothing but overheat the engine. You had to find the exact throttle position to keep the motor operating at maximum pulling power, letting it crawl steadily upward. The RV lumbered forward like an exhausted ox, its frame shaking and undercarriage groaning, yet it kept climbing. Almost to the summit, Lin Xiaohe said, watching the landscape outside her window. 100 more meters to the top of the slope. Fangxing gripped the steering wheel tight, holding the gas perfectly steady. The RV crested the hilltop, and he finally laid eyes on the true form of the thunderstorm. It wasn't merely dark clouds and lightning as he'd imagined. A jagged rift had split open the sky, murky purple light cascading endlessly down from the tear. As if a massive hole had been punched through the cloud layer, crackling arcs of lightning flickering non-stop along the fissure's edges. Loose gravel on the ground trembled faintly from static electricity, and the air reeked of sharp, acrid ozone. Good God, Su Muing breathed quietly. Fangxing had no time to linger on his thoughts. He parked the RV on a flat patch atop the slope, roughly 5 kilometers from the storm's core. Close enough to see the lightning, yet far enough to avoid direct impact. Stop here, he said. We'll wait out the thunderstorm. Here. Su Muing scanned the barren wilderness around them, completely exposed with no cover in sight. What if the commotion draws zombies over? Zombies stay dormant during thunderstorms. Fangxing nodded at a system notification on his screen. Didn't you read it? Intense light and deafening thunder drive them away. This is actually the safest window we'll get. But the second the storm passes, we'll be vulnerable again. Which is why we hit the road the instant it lets up. Fangxing cut the engine and switched off all vehicle lights. The cabin sank into pitch darkness, illuminated only by the faint glow of his phone screen. The three of them fell silent, listening to the distant rumble of thunder rolling across the wasteland. Fangxing's phone vibrated suddenly. It wasn't a standard system alert. The gray tab he'd noticed earlier had faded to pale gold, labeled with 2 words, awaiting activation. He tapped it open. Doomsday Chariot God System. Activation condition check. Condition 1. Total driving distance exceeds 100 kilometers. Completed. 127 kilometers. Condition 2. First encounter with a life-threatening hazard. Completed. Convenience store zombie horde. Condition 3. Team size reaches 2 members. Completed. 2 members. All prerequisites satisfied. Activate now. Fangxing froze for a split second. A golden finger? The cheat ability protagonists got in all those doomsday novels. He glanced at Su Muing, then Lin Xiaohe. Neither could see the interface, only he had access to it. Activate, he murmured silently in his mind. The phone screen flickered once. Doomsday Chariot God System, successfully activated. Core functions. 1. Real-time vehicle status monitoring, passive, view durability levels for every RV component. 2. Driving proficiency augmentation, passive, 30 faster reaction time during extreme maneuvers. Current RV durability, 47. Component status, engine, functional, transmission, warning alert, tires, rear left tire leaking air, windshield wipers, broken. Tip, level up the RV to unlock additional advanced features. Xing stared at the screen for 5 full seconds before exhaling slowly. What's wrong? Su Muing asked. Nothing. Xing flipped the phone face down on the dashboard. Just thinking, the game finally tossed us a halfway decent newbie reward. Su Muing didn't press for details, assuming he meant the supply care package the system had issued earlier. The thunderstorm raged on in the distance. Every lightning strike that split the ground sent a faint tremor rippling through the earth. Xing closed his eyes, his mind racing over the newly unlocked abilities. Real-time vehicle diagnostics were game-changing. He could track every part's wear and tear on his phone, catching mechanical failures before they stranded him instead of scrambling to fix a breakdown after the fact. As for the boosted driving reflexes, he hadn't gotten a chance to test it yet, but a 30 speed boost during crisis handling sounded incredibly powerful. The storm lasted roughly 40 minutes. When the final lightning bolt struck and the ash-purple storm clouds began to disperse, Xing restarted the engine. Let's move, he said. The second this storm clears, the zombies will start swarming back. The RV careened down the hillside, looping back along the gravel track. Xing checked the vehicle readout on his phone. Engine temperature stable, transmission running hot, but within safe limits. Rear left tire pressure steadily dropping. The rear left tire's leaking, he warned. How much longer can it hold out? Su Muing asked. 20 kilometers max. We'll have to swap it for the spare after that. Xing pushed the speedometer up to 60 kilometers per hour, bouncing over loose gravel. In the rearview mirror, the storm front receded far behind them, but scattered pinpricks of light began flickering out of the blackness to take its place. Not lights. Eyes. Zombie irises reflected pale gray-white in the dark, like a roving swarm of fireflies converging from every direction toward the storm zone. Step on it. Lin Xiao's voice carried a faint tremor of anxiety at last. Xing slammed the gas pedal to the floor. The RV hurtled recklessly over the gravel path, loose stones pinging and clattering against the undercarriage in a constant staccato rattle. The pale gray pinpricks in the mirror shrank further and further away, vanishing entirely into the night. Xing let out a relieved breath. His phone lit up with a new notification. Driving proficiency augmentation, first trigger activated. Hazard evasion on complex terrain. Gravel road plus damp surface plus nighttime conditions. Overall rating. B plus 30 faster reaction buff active. Maintain consistent performance to raise rating. This system's a harsh grader, Xing muttered under his breath. Su Muing didn't catch his words. What did you say? I said we need to find somewhere to swap out this tire. The distant echo of thunder had not fully faded. Storm clouds churned across the horizon like spilled ink, yet they no longer blanketed the entire sky. A harsh red number blinked on the vehicle monitor. Rear left tire pressure, 15.2 psi. Danger threshold crossed. Xing's gaze locked on the flashing warning, yet his foot stayed steady on the accelerator. Years running a modification shop had honed his instincts. Now was not the time to stop, even if he only drove another 10 kilometers to find a slightly level shoulder to pull over on. 10 kilometers later, once he'd fully parked, engaged the handbrake, and swung open the rear cargo door, Su Muing stood right behind him. Phone flashlight illuminating beads of sweat glistening on her forehead. You know how to change a tire? Xing knelt down, sliding the jack beneath the vehicle's lift point, a self-deprecating smile tugging at his lips. I owned a car modification shop. What do you think? He paused, cranking the jack handle with a loud ratcheting grind. Though I've only ever swapped tires on high-performance sports cars before, this beat-up van's a first for me. Is there much difference? Su Muing queried. Absolutely, Xing replied, still turning the jack until the rear left wheel lifted 3 inches off the ground. Sports car tires cost a fortune. This spares cheap scrap rubber. Lin Xiaohe rolled down the passenger window, her gaze fixed rigidly on the pitch-black forest beyond the roadside. Hurry up, Mercedes. Her tone turned cold all of a sudden. Movement coming from the northeast. Xing doubled his pace. He unscrewed the lug nuts, rolled the flat tire aside, and hauled out the spare, moving fast as if racing against a death sentence. Su Muing murmured quietly beside him. This spare looks like it belongs on a 3-wheeler. A tire that rolls is a usable tire. Xing slid the spare onto the wheel hub and hand-tightened the 4 lug nuts. He glanced upward at the sky. Storm clouds hung oppressively low, like a sheet of iron poised to crash down at any second. His phone vibrated. A line of text only he could see popped up on screen. Thunderstorm reformation detected, 35 probability. Recommend installing lightning protection apparatus to reduce risk of electronic equipment failure. Available construction materials. Copper pipe ×1, waste heat exhaust tubing, copper wire ×1, salvage from Iveco wiring harness, electrical tape ×1, iron wire ×1. Do you simplified lightning rod modification blueprint? Fangxing blinked in surprise. A modification blueprint? A brand new system feature? He tapped view. A 3D schematic loaded onto the screen, marking the RV's roof luggage rack with arrows detailing the assembly. Mount the copper pipe at the rack's highest point, run copper wiring down to the trailer hitch, and drive the hitch into the soil to serve as a grounding electrode. Isn't this exactly what I planned to build earlier today? Fangxing muttered to himself. Su Muing leaned in to peer at his phone, but the screen only displayed the standard system alert. The blueprint remained invisible to everyone but him. I said we'd better rig up a lightning rod. Fangxing retrieved the copper pipe and wiring from the rear compartment. If another storm hits, we won't get fried alive. You're serious? Su Muing stared at the copper tube in his hands. You plan to use that as a lightning conductor? Copper conducts electricity, second only to silver. Fangxing had already clambered onto the RV roof, Su Muing shining her phone light up to guide him. Way cheaper than silver, and we've got it on hand for free. Lin Xiaohe watched them from inside the vehicle, the corner of her mouth twitching faintly. She'd seen countless survival tactics in the doomsday wasteland, but never anyone climbing onto an RV roof to build a lightning rod while a natural disaster loomed. Fangxing knelt at the roof's edge, standing the copper pipe upright and securing it firmly to the luggage rack with electrical tape and iron wire. The pipe sat slightly off-center, but he shrugged it off. Even a crooked conductor worked fine. The Leaning Tower of Pisa had tilted for 1,000 years without collapsing, so what harm could a lopsided lightning rod do? That's not the Leaning Tower of Pisa, it's just copper pipe wrapped in tape. Su Muing called up from the ground, craning her neck to look. Fangxing froze for a split second. Where had he heard that line before? Or was this whole scene oddly familiar? He shook off the strange déjà vu and got back to work. He wrapped one end of the copper wire tight around the base of the pipe, ran the length down the RV's side frame, and fastened the other end to the trailer hitch, which he drove 20 centimeters deep into the roadside dirt. All finished, Fangxing jumped back down off the roof. 0 cost, 10 minutes of labor. If lightning strikes next time, this RV will be the safest Faraday cage on this entire highway. A proper Faraday cage requires full metal enclosure, Su Muing pointed out. There's a hole cut into your roof, patched only with tape, and tape doesn't conduct electricity. The patched opening lacks full metal coverage, so current could seep through there, Fangxing considered briefly. I'll add 2 extra layers of foil tape over it. He climbed back onto the roof, pressing 2 more strips of aluminum foil tape over the repair, smoothing every edge down tightly. When he finished, the roof looked like a tattered pair of patched beggar's trousers, but the metallic coverage was vastly improved. His phone vibrated once more. Lightning rod modification complete. RV lightning strike resistance increased by 50. Bonus reward awarded. Survival points, plus 50. Current survival points, 50. Redeem supplies at transfer stations. We even get points for this. Fangxing held the phone out for Su Muing to see. Points for killing zombies. Points for vehicle modifications too. Su Muing glanced at the screen, and a thought crossed her mind. When we reach a transfer station, can we trade these points for new windshield wipers? That's a solid question. Fangxing was about to climb back into the driver's seat when Lin Xiaohe shouted sharply from inside the RV. Something's coming. He spun around instantly. 200 meters northeast, several pale gray shapes shuffled forward. Their pace was slower than a human's walking speed, yet steady and unwavering, each heavy, plodding step like tireless mechanical constructs. Zombies. At least 4 of them, lined up single file, advancing straight toward the RV. The thunderstorm's residue drew them out, Su Muing said. Now that the storm's passed, they're spreading across the area. Fangxing checked the vehicle diagnostics on his phone. Engine primed and ready, fuel levels full, rear left spare tire marked functional. He glanced back at the zombies, 150 meters away and closing. Get in. Fangxing pulled open the driver's door and slid behind the wheel. We've still got time to escape. The RV's engine roared to life, headlights blazing to illuminate the empty highway ahead. The zombies spotted the bright light and picked up speed abruptly, shuffling breaking into an uneven jog. Their jaws gaped open and shut in a repetitive motion, unleashing that skin-crawling gurgling heh-heh sound that carried far through the night air. Fangxing mashed the gas, and the RV surged forward. In the rearview mirror, the pale gray figures shrank smaller and smaller, yet they never stopped pursuing. They kept lumbering along the highway until the RV's taillights dwindled to a tiny red pinprick on the horizon, only then halting their chase, standing vacant in the middle of the road with no target left to follow. Fang Xing held the speed at 70 kilometers per hour for roughly 5 minutes before easing off the gas. We lost them, he said. Su Muing leaned back against her seat, exhaling a long, shaky breath. Lin Xiaohe spoke up from the back row. We shouldn't stop again tonight. Find somewhere secure and drive straight through until dawn. Somewhere secure? Fang Xing let out a bitter laugh. Does a truly safe place even exist in this doomsday wasteland? A heavy silence settled over the cabin for several heartbeats. His phone vibrated again. Fang Xing glanced down, not a generic system alert, but a notification from the Doomsday Chariot God system. First successful zombie evasion completed. Overall rating, C+. Advice: avoid waiting until zombies close within 150 meters before fleeing in future encounters. New function preview unlocked. Once RV is upgraded to Grade D, Blueprint 4, Sonic Zombie Repulsion Device, will be available. Fang Xing raised an eyebrow. Sonic repellent? That sounded promising. He flipped the phone face down on the dashboard and focused his full attention on driving. Su Muing studied him quietly for a moment before speaking. You look just like a roof repairman climbing up there to rig that lightning rod earlier. Fang Xing paused, then chuckled. I'm just a mechanic. Roofs and RV roofs aren't all that different. They're worlds apart. They're both roofs at the end of the day. Su Muing fell silent, but the faintest tiny smile tugged at the corner of her lips. Fang Xing didn't notice. His attention was split 3 ways. The uneven road stretching ahead, the secret cheat system only he could access on his phone, and the pale gray silhouettes that might materialize in the rearview mirror at any second. Countdown remaining, 49 hours. Before sunrise, they had to locate a genuinely defensible safe haven. Storm clouds swirled overhead once more, and the low rumble of distant thunder rolled across the wasteland. The 3 inside the RV exchanged uneasy glances. Fang Xing's phone lit up a second time. Secondary thunderstorm front rapidly approaching, 62 probability. Fang Xing's fingers tensed slightly against the steering wheel. Perhaps the deadliest threats in this broken world weren't the zombies, nor natural disasters. It was the endless unknown, and all he could do right now was keep driving forward through that boundless uncertainty, even if there was no place left ahead that could ever be called safe. Fang Xing drove for another 30 minutes. The pitch-black night faded to deep charcoal gray. The darkest hour before dawn had passed, and a faint streak of pale fish belly white peeked over the eastern horizon. It's almost sunrise. Su Muing's voice was thick with drowsiness, her eyelids drooping heavily, yet forcing herself to stay awake. Should we find somewhere to rest? I wish we could. Fang Xing glanced at the vehicle monitor on his phone. Engine temperature stable, transmission cool after the long drive. Even the spare tire marked fully functional, a pleasant surprise. But there's nowhere sheltered along this beat-up stretch of road. Lin Xiaohe spoke up suddenly from the back seat. 15 kilometers ahead sits an abandoned highway checkpoint. I caught a glimpse of it once when I passed through. Brick and concrete construction with a perimeter wall and iron main gate. If we can get inside, it's far safer than staying exposed out in the open. Fang Xing mulled it over briefly. Checkpoints are built right alongside highways with unobstructed sight lines, easy to defend. Any incoming zombie hordes would be visible from a distance, giving us advance warning. Exactly, Lin Xiaohe added. The only catch is, I can't be certain there aren't zombies holed up inside. We'll scope it out when we arrive. Fang Xing pressed the gas pedal, accelerating the RV forward. 12 kilometers later, signs of man-made infrastructure dotted the barren land on either side of the highway. Toppled road signs, rusted guardrails, a crumpled billboard emblazoned with the slogan "Welcome to XX Provincial Border," its lower half torn to shreds by some unknown force. We're nearly there, Lin Xiaohe said. Fang Xing eased off the accelerator. Lights spread across the landscape, visibility stretching several hundred meters ahead. He spotted the checkpoint Lin Xiaohe had described, a row of faded gray single-story buildings emblazoned with 6 large peeling red characters. Traffic Safety Inspection Station. A concrete plaza sat out front, ringed by a 2-meter-tall iron fence. The double iron main gate stood half ajar, one panel collapsed flat on the ground. One gate's fallen over, Fang Xing noted. We can get inside, but it won't be fully secure. The collapsed panel can be propped back upright, Lin Xiaohe explained. I checked the hinges. They didn't snap, just came loose from their welds. Fang Xing shot her a curious glance. You work in construction? No, Lin Xiaohe replied plainly. I just paid extra attention when I passed by before. Su Muing murmured from beside the driver's seat. Are you an intelligence broker or just a regular survivor? Your memory for every road and every building far surpasses an ordinary person's capacity. Lin Xiaohe fell silent for a beat. I simply have an excellent memory. Fang Xing chose not to press further. He parked the RV right at the checkpoint entrance, keeping the engine running, headlights illuminating the half-open iron gate. He scanned the empty plaza carefully. No zombies, no dried bloodstains. Only scattered dead leaves and trash littering the concrete, evidence that the place had lain abandoned for a long time. I'll go clear the area first. Fang Xing grabbed a utility knife, then hesitated and dug a crowbar out of the toolbox. A flimsy utility knife was useless against zombies. The crowbar could at least deliver crushing blows. I'm coming with you. Su Muing had already tightened her grip on a wrench. Stay in the vehicle, Fang Xing ordered. If any zombies rush out, your job is to start the RV and drive away immediately. Su Muing parted her lips to argue, but closed them without a word in the end. Fang Xing climbed out of the RV, crowbar clutched tight in his right hand, phone flashlight switched on in his left. He walked toward the half-open iron gate and nudged it gently with the crowbar. The rusted hinges let out a shrill, grating creak that echoed loud through the quiet pre-dawn air. He paused for a moment, tilting his head to listen closely. No sounds stirred from within the compound. He squeezed sideways through the crack in the door, the beam of his flashlight sweeping across the square. Dark dried stains marred the cement ground, the same marks as those on the convenience store's outer wall, left by desiccated zombie bodily fluids. The streaks stretched straight from the square's center to the bungalow's doorway, tracing a path where something had been dragged. Fang Xing followed the stains to the bungalow entrance. The door was locked, its padlock crusted solid with rust. It hadn't been opened in months at minimum. He glanced through the window into an office space. Overturned desks and chairs, papers scattered everywhere, and a dark, lumpy mass huddled in the corner, too indistinct to make out. He chose not to go inside. Turning, he inspected the perimeter fence, the iron bars spaced roughly 15 centimeters apart, too narrow for a zombie's arm to slip through. Still, the 2-meter height would not hold if the undead stacked themselves to climb over. At the very least, they would be safe for a short while. He walked over to the fallen iron gate and knelt to examine its hinges. Lin Xiaohe had been right. The hinges themselves were intact, only the weld split open. A welding machine could fix it, yet he possessed neither the equipment nor a power source. He could, however, heave the gate upright against its frame and prop it with heavy objects to block ordinary zombies. Fang Xing stood and prepared to head back to fetch the others, when a voice drifted over from far off. It was not the gurgling hoarseness of a zombie. It was a human voice. Help, somebody help. A woman's scream, carried from the highway, shrill and choked with sobs. Fang Xing's heart lurched sharply. He strode out through the gate and stared toward the sound. 200 meters down the highway's right side, a woman in a white t-shirt sprinted toward their RV. Blood speckled her clothing, not large smears but tiny splatters as if fluid had sprayed onto her. 50 meters behind her, 3 ashen gray figures lurched in pursuit. Zombies. 3 ordinary ones, not fast, yet still swifter than the woman. She was already burning out, stumbling with every step, liable to collapse at any second. Fang Xing tightened his grip on the pry bar. Su Muing leaned out the RV window. Someone's calling for help. I see her. Fang Xing's tone stayed calm, yet his mind raced a mile a minute. The system had warned of traps laid by scavengers using fake distress cries to lure victims for robbery. Was this woman's plea genuine, or a ruse? If it were a trap, ambushers would lie in wait nearby. He scanned both sides of the highway. The barren wasteland stretched clear and unobscured, nowhere to hide, unless the attackers waited further out, ready to block the road with vehicles. But what if her cry for help was real? If he did nothing, the zombies would tackle her within seconds and tear her apart. Fang Xing reached a decision, not some reckless, naive impulse. Su Muing, drive the RV inside the square and lock all doors, he ordered. I'm going to save her. Alone. You guard the vehicle. If this is a trap, her accomplices will rush to steal the RV once I leave. With you behind the wheel, you can at least drive away to escape. Su Muing gritted her teeth. Be careful. Fang Xing did not wait for the RV to pull into the square. He was already sprinting toward the woman, pry bar clutched firm in his hand. He had no intention of fighting all 3 zombies head-on. He lacked the strength, and there was no need. He ran to a position halfway between the woman and the undead, 50 meters from the zombies, then halted, drew a deep breath, and shouted at the top of his lungs. Hey, over here. Come get me. The zombies froze. Their milky gray eyes swiveled toward Fang Xing. Their jaws gnawed open and shut, emitting low gurgles. Abandoning the woman, they shambled straight for him instead. It worked. Zombies possessed sharp hearing, yet their attention easily diverted by louder noises. The woman crumpled to the ground, gasping for air, tears and snot streaking her face. Fang Xing made no move to help her. He turned and ran back toward the RV, the zombies lumbering after him far too slowly to catch up. He reached the checkpoint gate and squeezed through the gap. The iron bars blocked the undead, who stretched ashen arms through the slats, clawing fruitlessly at empty air. The three zombies pressed against the outer side of the gate, their jaws snapping constantly with sharp clicking sounds. Fang Xing leaned against the wall to catch his breath, then walked deeper into the square. Su Muing had parked the RV beside the bungalow, window rolled halfway down, a wrench gripped tight in hand. "Where's the woman who called for help?" Su Muing asked. Fang Xing nodded toward the gate. The woman had scrambled back to her feet and limped slowly toward the checkpoint. Her white t-shirt was indeed stained with blood, yet it was not hers. The splatters arced outward toward her body, meaning she had stood close to someone who'd been attacked. Fang Xing walked to the gate and studied her through the bars as she drew near. She looked to be 27 or 28, with short matted hair, dust smudged across her cheeks, cracked dry lips, and puffy red eyes. A shallow wound sliced her left forearm, still oozing fresh blood. Thank you," she rasped hoarsely. "I thought I was going to die." Fang Xing did not unlock the gate. Standing on the inner side, he spoke through the bars. "What's your name?" Chen Min. "Where did you come from?" "The West," Chen Min gasped. "My husband and I were surrounded by zombies in our car. He let me run while they bit him." She dissolved into violent sobs, dropping to the ground with her shoulders shaking uncontrollably. Fang Xing's expression remained unchanging. He had read countless tragedies in post-apocalyptic novels, yet he also knew tragedy and deception were separated by the thinnest line. "Your husband was bitten?" Fang Xing pressed. "Did he turn?" Chen Min shook her head. "I don't know. He was still holding the zombies off when I fled. I ran nearly a kilometer before these three chased me. I kept running until I spotted your headlights." Fang Xing's gaze fixed on her arm wound. Its edges were bright red, no trace of black discoloration, and the blood seeped out vivid scarlet. A zombie bite would turn the surrounding flesh gray-black within minutes, their saliva laced with a toxin that rapidly rotted tissue. This cut looked like a scrape from a branch or scrap metal. He made up his mind. "Open the gate and let her in," Fang Xing told Su Muing. Su Muing hesitated briefly, then climbed out to heave the fallen iron gate aside. Chen Min stumbled inside and dropped heavily onto the cement floor, breaking down into tears once more. Fang Xing paid her no comfort. He stepped outside the gate to check on the three zombies. They still lingered by the bars, no longer reaching through. Their attention had drifted elsewhere. 300 meters down the highway, a vehicle silhouette sat parked. Fang Xing narrowed his eyes. A black SUV, stationary in the middle of the road with its lights off. He would never have spotted it without dawn breaking. "Su Muing," Fang Xing whispered sharply. "Do you see that vehicle?" Su Muing followed his line of sight, her face draining of color. "How long has it been there?" "I have no idea," Fang Xing replied. "There was nothing there when I ran out to rescue her just now." Chen Min continued weeping in the square. Fang Xing knelt down, meeting her eyes with a steady, calm tone. "Chen Min, tell me, do you know the people inside that SUV?" Chen Min's sobs hit a brief stutter. A split-second pause, yet Fang Xing caught it clearly. "And no, I don't know them," she lied, her gaze darting away guiltily. Fang Xing stood and turned to Su Muing. "Shut the gate. Prop that fallen iron panel upright and brace it against the RV." "What's wrong?" Su Muing asked. "We've walked straight into a trap," Fang Xing said coldly. Her distress cry was bait. "The zombies were herded to drive us here, and that SUV is waiting to close the net." Without another word, Su Muing hurried to push the fallen gate upright. Fang Xing stepped in to help. Together, they hauled it vertical against the frame. Fang Xing backed the RV forward to wedge its front bumper against the metal gate, creating a temporary sealed enclosure. Chen Min sat motionless in the square's center, her tears dried up. She watched Fang Xing and Su Muing work, her lips twitching as if she wanted to speak, yet said nothing. Fang Xing knelt before her. "You get one chance to tell the truth. Do you know the people in that SUV?" Chen Min hung her head, silent for a long stretch, then she nodded. "They're the scavengers," she murmured faintly. "My husband, he wasn't bitten by zombies. They beat him. They stole our car, knocked him unconscious, and forced me to lure someone out with cries for help. If I succeeded, they'd storm in and hijack your RV. If I failed," she trailed off, unable to finish. Fang Xing drew a deep breath and exhaled slowly. "Is your husband still alive?" he asked. Fresh tears spilled down Chen Min's cheeks. "I don't know." Fang Xing turned to glance at the black SUV. It remained parked, unmoving, as if waiting for a signal. "Su Muing," he said, "pack all our supplies. We leave in 5 minutes. Which way out? Su Muing glanced at the 2-meter iron perimeter fence. The RV could never climb over it. Back the way we came. Fang Xing walked to the gate and peered through the slats at the 3 zombies. They still loitered outside, yet no longer paced. They dropped to a squat, as if waiting for orders. That was wrong. Zombies did not wait. They only reacted to sound and light sources. Fang Xing leaned closer to study the undead's ankles. Black fabric straps bound each one's lower legs. Straps no genuine zombie would wear. These 3 zombies were humans under control. Sweat beaded in Fang Xing's palms. This trap was far more elaborate than he'd guessed. Controlled zombies to block escape routes, a fake distress call to draw targets in, and an SUV to cut them off. A complete hunting operation. Proof these scavengers pulled this scheme regularly. Forget packing supplies. Fang Xing ordered Su Muing. We leave now. He walked to the RV, started the engine, reversed half a meter to free the gate from the bumper, then slammed on the gas. The vehicle crashed through the iron barrier and burst out of the checkpoint. The 3 fake zombies lurched to their feet and charged the RV. Fang Xing did not slow. He steered straight for the figure in the center. The RV's bumper slammed into the human disguised as a zombie with a dull thud, sending them flying to tumble across the pavement. The other 2 lunged and missed, crashing flat onto the highway. The RV roared onto the open road. The black SUV lurched into motion 300 meters away, accelerating hard to ram the RV's side and slice it in half. Fang Xing wrenched the steering wheel hard, spinning the RV in a tight semicircle. Black tire skid marks streaked the asphalt. The SUV shot past inches from the RV's rear bumper, barely missing them by less than 10 centimeters. Hold on tight, Fang Xing shouted. He slammed the gas pedal to the floor, the RV hurtling wildly down the highway, the SUV hot on their tail. The gap between the vehicles shrank steadily. The SUV boasted far superior performance, faster acceleration, and a higher top speed. Fang Xing glanced at the vehicle diagnostics on his phone. The engine temperature had climbed to the red warning line, and the transmission was overheating rapidly. We can't outrun it, Su Muing said. I know, Fang Xing replied, eyes locked on the rearview mirror. But I've got something they don't. What? A driver with nothing to lose. Fang Xing spun the wheel sharply, veering the RV off the highway and into the rough wasteland. Gravel and weeds scraped loudly against the undercarriage. As the vehicle jolted violently, Su Muing nearly bounced out of her seat. Lin Xiaohe clung white-knuckled to the rear seat handrail, while Chun Min curled into a ball in the corner, covering her head with her arms. The SUV abandoned the chase. It halted at the highway's edge, hesitated for several seconds, then made a U-turn and drove away. Fang Xing drove another 500 meters deeper into the wasteland before cutting the engine. He leaned back against the seat, gasping heavily. Why? Why didn't it keep chasing us? Su Muing's voice trembled. Low ground clearance, Fang Xing explained. That SUV would get stuck bottoming out on these rocky wastelands. My RV has a high chassis. It can handle this terrain. Su Muing stared at him, her expression tangled with unreadable emotion. Lin Xiaohe spoke softly from the back seat. Chun Min, where is your husband? Chun Min lifted her tear-streaked face. I don't know. They dragged him away. They might kill him or turn him into one of those. She fell silent before finishing the sentence. Fang Xing restarted the engine and steered the RV back onto the empty highway. The black SUV long vanished. Only morning wind sweeping across the asphalt. Where are we going? Su Muing asked. Fang Xing checked the countdown timer on his phone, 47 hours remaining. We're going to find your husband, he told Chun Min. Do you know where the scavengers' base is? Chun Min's eyes widened in shock. You want to rescue him? No, Fang Xing said flatly. I'm going to raid their stockpiles. If they can control zombies, they must hold valuable supplies. Su Muing stared at him as if seeing him for the very first time. Fang Xing pressed the gas pedal, the RV rumbling forward into the unknown beneath the morning sunlight. A new notification popped up on his Golden Finger System's phone screen. Hostile faction detected. Scavengers, armed human group. Recommended action, avoid direct confrontation for the time being. Bonus tip, upgrade the RV to Class C to unlock the camouflage coating blueprint, lowering detection risk from human factions. Fang Xing glanced at the alert, then flipped the phone face down onto the dashboard. Camouflage coating, he muttered to himself. Sounds useful. First, though, I need to survive long enough to hit Class C. In the rearview mirror, the checkpoint faded completely from sight. Yet the memory of those controlled fake zombies lingered fresh in his mind. In the apocalypse, the living were always far more terrifying than the undead. Fang Xing steered the RV back onto the main highway. Yet instead of continuing east, He spun around to head west. Chun Min had fled from the west, meaning the scavengers' hideout had to lie somewhere in that direction. Are you absolutely sure we're going back? Su Muing's voice still shook from the harrowing high-speed escape minutes prior. They have at least 4 vehicles, firearms, and trained controlled zombies. What do we have? A beat-up RV, 1 wrench, a pry bar, and a box counselor. We've also got me, Feng Xing said. What good does that do? A driver with nothing to lose. Feng Xing repeated his earlier line, a faint dry smile tugging at his lips. And like I said, I'm not here to play hero and save anyone. I'm here to steal supplies. Lin Xiaohe spoke quietly from the back row. If we plan to raid their stockpiles, I have a suggestion. Speak. The scavengers' base is almost certainly an abandoned logistics park. I passed one traveling west. It's ringed by tall walls, with sentries posted at the main gate and multiple modified vehicles parked inside. The place is easy to defend and hard to attack head-on. But if we hit only the outer perimeter and hijack a lone supply truck, we stand a fighting chance. Feng Xing shot her a quick glance in the rearview mirror. Did you count how many vehicles you saw inside? 5 total. 1 black SUV, 2 pickup trucks, a van, and a box cargo truck. Lin Xiaohe paused. The van's windows were completely boarded shut, and constant gurgling noises came from inside it. A zombie transport vehicle Mercedes, Feng Xing frowned. They lock the undead inside to use as weapons. When they reach a target zone, they release them to chase prey and block escape routes. Chun Min huddled in the rear corner and whispered, "They locked my husband inside that van. They knocked him unconscious and dragged him into it." Feng Xing ignored her emotional outburst. What he needed right now was intelligence, not grief. "Give me the exact location of the logistics park," he ordered. "Head west from this intersection roughly 25 kilometers. There's a side road branching off the highway's right side, and the park sits at its dead end," Lin Xiaohe explained. A dead, withered locust tree marks the turnoff, impossible to miss. Feng Xing cranked the steering wheel left and turned the RV west. Su Muing drew a long, shaky breath. "You've lost your mind." "Maybe," Feng Xing said, glancing at the vehicle diagnostics on his phone. The engine temperature had dropped, the transmission functioned normally, and the spare tire held good pressure. His golden finger system popped up another alert. Hostile faction stronghold detected. Recommended tactic: feint an attack on the east while striking the west to avoid full frontal combat. Temporary quest unlocked. Scavenger supplies. Extra rewards granted upon successful hijacking of supply vehicles. Feng Xing said nothing to Su Muing about the quest. If he told her, she would only think he'd fully lost his senses. 20 minutes later, the dead locust tree came into view on the highway's right shoulder. Half its trunk lay charred black, as if struck by lightning, bare gnarled branches clawing skyward like a desiccated skeletal hand. Feng Xing parked the RV at the turnoff without driving down the side road. He cut the engine, grabbed his phone, and climbed the earthen embankment beside the highway. Activating his golden finger system's newly unlocked passive skill remote observation, terrain awareness unlocked alongside upgraded driving proficiency. He scanned the entire layout of the logistics park from a distance. The logistics park sits roughly 2 kilometers down the fork road. Its perimeter wall is built of red bricks, around 3 meters tall, topped with barbed wire. A pickup truck is parked at the main gate, with 2 men sitting inside it. Inside the compound, a black SUV and another pickup are parked in front of the office building, while a windowless enclosed van rests furthest back, beside a box truck. Feng Xing counted at least 6 people in plain sight. There were likely more hiding inside the buildings. He climbed back into the RV and recounted everything he'd seen. 6 men, 5 vehicles, plus a van full of trapped zombies, Su Muing summarized. "What are our odds of pulling this off? We aren't fighting head-on, so odds don't work that way." Feng Xing squatted down, picked up a twig, and drew a diagram in the dirt. The logistics park only has 1 entrance and exit. Sentries guard the gate. Charging straight in is suicide. But there's a collapsed stretch on the eastern wall visible on satellite imagery. I checked just now. There's indeed a 2-meter-wide breach, temporarily blocked off with sheets of iron. "How did you spot it?" Su Muing asked. "High ground gives a clear view." Feng Xing made no mention of his special system ability. "We'll slip through that gap. We'll steer clear of the van and the office building, heading straight for the box truck. That's their supply vehicle. Its tire tracks are deeply sunk into the mud, meaning it's fully loaded. We grab the supplies and bolt." "Is there anything blocking the path from the breach to the truck?" Lin Xiaohe asked. "A 50-meter stretch of open ground," Feng Xing said. "We'll have to dash across, load the goods, then retreat the same way we came." "Load the supplies?" Su Muing's eyes widened. You actually plan to get out of the RV to haul cargo? What else? Steal an empty truck home as a souvenir. Su Muing took a deep breath and glanced at Lin Xiaohe. Lin Xiaohe shrugged, wordlessly signaling she thought the plan was worth a shot. Chun Min huddled in the corner and spoke softly. I can help carry supplies. Fang Xing shot her a glance. Are you sure? Your husband might be inside that van. Tears welled up in Chun Min's eyes again, but she bit her lip and nodded firmly. I'll help you move the supplies. If we take their provisions, they won't be able to hurt more people. Fang Xing didn't offer empty comfort like, your husband might still be alive. He had no way of knowing the truth. In the apocalypse, it was better not to speak on uncertain hopes. Move out. Fang Xing stood up. Su Muing, you drive. I'll coordinate between the wall breach and the truck. Lin Xiaohe, your leg's injured. You stand guard at the gap to cover our retreat. Chen Min, you'll help me load the cargo. Su Muing stared in surprise. Me drive? I thought you were the driver. You're behind the wheel now. Fang Xing handed her the keys. You don't need to go fast. Just wait for us outside the breach the second I yell run. Su Muing took the keys, her palms slick with sweat. The RV didn't enter the logistics park. Instead, they circled around to the outer side of the eastern wall. Fang Xing found the breach. The iron sheets were only loosely propped there, not secured, and slid aside with a light push. He parked the RV outside the gap, told Su Muing to stay ready in the driver's seat, then led Lin Xiaohe and Chen Min through the opening into the compound. The park was far larger than it had looked from outside. Rows of abandoned warehouses loomed, all their windows shattered, walls covered in graffiti and black, oily stains. The box truck stood roughly 30 meters from the windowless van, separated by a discarded shipping container. Fang Xing led the other two along the base of the warehouse walls, using containers and derelict machinery for cover. When they reached the truck, he peeked toward the van. Its windows were fully boarded shut, low gurgling moans echoing nonstop from within, along with the shrill scrape of fingernails clawing at metal. 2 padlocks secured the van's doors from the outside. At least 20 zombies in there. Fang Xing whispered his estimate. Chen Min stared at the van, her lips trembling. Her husband could be trapped inside with those creatures, if he hadn't turned yet. Fang Xing tugged her sleeve gently. Focus on the job first. Once we're finished loading, I'll break open the van if the coast is clear. Chen Min nodded, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. The box truck's rear compartment wasn't locked. Fang Xing pried the latch open, and his eyes lit up at the sight inside. Neatly stacked supply crates, no fewer than 20 in total. He pried one open to find military compressed biscuits. The next held mineral water bottles. The third was a first aid kit. The fourth contained 2 full barrels of diesel fuel. Start moving them, Fang Xing ordered in a hushed tone. The 3 of them began hauling supplies back toward the wall gap. Chen Min carried 1 crate per trip. Lin Xiaohe's leg hurt, but her arm's strength held up, letting her move 1 crate at a time as well. Fang Xing carried 2 crates at once, slinging a barrel of diesel over one shoulder for good measure. First trip, second trip, third trip. On the 4th run, Fang Xing caught a sound. It wasn't the zombie gurgles, but human footsteps. He dropped into a crouch instantly, shielding himself behind a supply crate. A man in camouflage trousers walked over from the office building, a cigarette dangling from his lips, heading straight for the van. Fang Xing recognized those camouflage pants, the same man who'd pointed a gun at him out on the highway earlier. The camouflage-clad man reached the van and kicked its door hard. The zombies inside erupted into a louder, frantic chorus of moans. Quit your racket, or you get no feed tonight, the man grumbled, then shouted back toward the office building. 4th brother, haul the 2 new captives over here. This van's almost full. 2 more men emerged from the office, dragging an unconscious male survivor. It wasn't Chen Min's husband. It was another stranger. Fang Xing stayed perfectly still, hunkered behind the truck, watching them shove the unconscious man into the van and relock the doors. The camouflage man finished his cigarette and started walking toward the supply truck. Fang Xing tightened his grip on the crowbar in his hand. If the man noticed nearly half the supplies missing after 4 trips, he'd grow suspicious at once. If he opened the compartment and saw half the stock gone. When the camouflage man was less than 10 meters from the truck, a deafening blast of sound echoed from the park's main gate. Su Muing had slammed her palm down on the RV's horn. It wasn't a short tap, she held it down, a shrill, unbroken wail reverberating across the empty compound. The camouflage man spun around sharply. Someone's broken through the gate. He sprinted toward the entrance, and 3 more men charged out of the office building after him. Every guard's attention was locked onto the blaring horn at the main gate. Seizing the window of opportunity, Fang Xing gestured sharply for Lin Xiaohe and Chen Min to flee. The three grabbed the last remaining crates and rushed for the wall breach. Fang Xing was the last to leave. He paused beside the truck, glancing once at the windowless van, then toward the main gate. Su Muing's horn still blared, but two men were already running toward the eastern wall. They'd likely spotted the breach. There was no more time to waste. Fang Xing sprinted for the gap, shoved the final two crates through to Lin Xiaohe waiting outside, then scrambled over the wall himself, repositioning the iron sheets to block the opening before leaping into the RV's passenger seat. "Floor it!" Fang Xing shouted. Su Muing slammed the gas pedal to the floor. The RV careened out of the eastern side of the logistics park, bouncing wildly across the wasteland. In the rearview mirror, two men in camouflage stood at the wall breach and fired two gunshots after them. Both missed, kicking up clouds of dust where the bullets struck the dirt. The RV took a wide looping detour before merging back onto the main highway. Su Muing held 80 kilometers per hour for a full 10 minutes before easing off the accelerator. "We lost them." Her voice shook, yet a smile tugged at her lips. "We actually pulled it off." Fang Xing stepped back into the RV's rear compartment to take stock. 13 supply crates, 2 barrels of diesel plus a toolbox he'd grabbed off the truck floor on his way out. "We did." Fang Xing leaned back against the seat and let out a long exhale. "And we walked away with a huge haul." Chen Min sat in the back row, staring at the stacked crates, and suddenly spoke up. "Listen, your phone's ringing." Fang Xing pulled out his device. It wasn't a standard system alert, but a completion prompt from his unique ability system. Temporary quest, scavenger supplies, completed. Rating: A. Minor hesitation during retreat through wall breach. Rewards: survival points plus 300. RV upgrade blueprint. Camouflage coating, unlocked. Requires RV tier D to craft. Warning note: the scavenger faction has logged your vehicle's unique signature. It is advised you avoid this zone for the next 48 hours. Fang Xing's mouth twitched upward as he studied the camouflage coating blueprint. With this upgrade, human raider factions would have far less chance of spotting the RV. But just as he prepared to pocket the phone, a bright red warning popped up on the screen. Tracking signal detected. The scavengers planted a locator beacon on the supply truck. Coordinates are transmitting in real time. Urgent recommendation: dismantle the tracker immediately. Estimated remaining tracking window: 15 minutes. Fang Xing's expression turned grim. "Pull over," he ordered. Su Muing hit the brakes hard. "What's wrong?" Fang Xing jumped out and rushed to the rear compartment, rummaging through the looted crates. At the bottom of the third crate, he found a tiny black device the size of his pinky finger, a faint red light blinking steadily on its surface. A tracking beacon. He hurled it onto the ground and crushed it beneath his boot. The red light flickered out instantly, but 15 minutes of transmission had already given the scavengers a rough idea of their escape route. Fang Xing climbed back into the RV, his features heavy with worry. "They had a tracker planted on the truck. I destroyed it, but they already know which direction we fled. What do we do now?" Su Muing asked. Fang Xing glanced at the disaster countdown on his phone. Just over 45 hours remaining. "Keep heading east," he decided. "We need to find a hiding spot they can't trace us to before they catch up. What kind of place could hide us from them?" Fang Xing paused and glanced back at Lin Xiaohe in the rear seat. Lin Xiaohe answered. "Around 60 kilometers east, there's an abandoned tunnel. It's extremely narrow. Only one vehicle can pass through at a time. If we park the RV dead center inside and block both entrances, it makes a perfect natural fortress." "Won't there be zombies inside the tunnel?" Su Muing questioned. "I've been there before. There weren't any," Lin Xiaohe replied. "But that was 3 days ago. I can't guarantee it's still clear now." Fang Xing made his call. "We're heading for the tunnel. We'll reach it before nightfall." The RV rumbled onward east. Far off on the western horizon, the silhouette of a black SUV could be seen closing in fast in the rearview mirror. Fang Xing pressed harder on the gas, pushing their speed up to 90 kilometers per hour. Su Muing stared at the mirror and whispered, "They're catching up. I see the Mercedes." Fang Xing's gaze stayed locked on the road ahead, while his special system displayed real-time vehicle stats in the corner of his vision. Engine temperature 92, transmission load 87, tires in good condition. "Can we outrun them?" Su Muing asked. Fang Xing didn't reply. He mashed the gas pedal all the way down. The RV's engine let out a strained roar, the speedometer slowly climbing to 95. But the black SUV was faster. What had once been a tiny speck in the mirror had bloomed into a fully recognizable vehicle, the gap between them shrinking by the second. Fang Xing scanned the terrain ahead. A sharp curve loomed, with a steep embankment running along its outer edge, leading down to a dried-up riverbed. He twisted the steering wheel hard, without warning. Instead of staying on the highway, The RV careened off the embankment and plowed into the riverbed. Loose gravel and sand sent the vehicle lurching violently, but its high ground clearance proved its strength once more. The black SUV skidded to a halt at the top of the slope, unwilling to follow them down onto the uneven ground. Fangxing drove roughly 1 kilometer along the riverbed before climbing back up a gentle incline to rejoin the highway. When he checked the rearview mirror, the black SUV had vanished entirely. They couldn't follow because of low ground clearance? Su Muing guessed. Not exactly, Fangxing said. This time, they already know our general direction. They don't need to rush after us single file. Why not? Because they've got a whole fleet of vehicles. They're moving to box us in from multiple directions. Fangxing's phone lit up again. 3 red dots appeared on his system's map marker, 3 separate vehicles converging on their position from 3 different routes. Fangxing drew a deep breath. This was never going to be a fair fight. But fairness had ceased to exist the day the apocalypse arrived. Hold on tight, he warned the others. We're about to pull off a risky maneuver. He turned to Lin Xiaohe. Give me exact directions to that tunnel you mentioned. Lin Xiaohe pointed straight ahead. Past that mountain ridge, then turn right. Fangxing cranked the wheel right, and the RV veered onto an even narrower country lane. The red dots marking their pursuers crept steadily closer on the map behind them. 40 kilometers left until the tunnel. A little over 40 hours left until the first natural disaster hit. Fangxing's only assets were a barely functional falling apart RV, his unique ability system, and 3 companions each weighed down by their own fears and worries. He glanced sideways at Su Muing in the passenger seat. No fear clouded her features, only a resigned look that said, I know you're about to do something reckless, and I'm too tired to argue. Fangxing suddenly chuckled. What are you laughing at? Su Muing asked. At you, Fangxing said. You get motion sickness, yet you've never thrown up once riding with me behind the wheel. I just hold it in. You've got an impressive amount of self-control, then. Su Muing didn't respond, but the tiniest faint smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. The RV raced down the country lane, churning up a long trailing cloud of dust behind it. The red dots of the pursuers still lingered in the rearview, yet the distance between them stopped shrinking. Fangxing gripped the steering wheel tight, his eyes fixed firmly on the road stretching forward. The tunnel was still far ahead, but their real trial had only just begun. Fangxing drove along the country lane for roughly 20 minutes before the 3 red tracking dots on his special system map vanished completely. It would be a stretch to say they'd fully lost the pursuers. More accurately, the raiders had stopped their advance at some junction and held their position. Fangxing guessed the scavengers had set up roadblocks along all major highways, never expecting him to take this long-forgotten, overgrown country lane. The pavement was cracked wide enough to fit a fist. Wild weeds grew taller than the RV's roof, and this route likely didn't even register on any satellite mapping data. They stopped chasing us, Mercedes. Su Muing stared into the rearview mirror, disbelief edging her tone. Your hunch paid off. It wasn't luck, Fangxing corrected her. It was calculated judgment. The scavengers are seasoned raiders. Veterans won't waste manpower chasing a beat-up RV they assume can't travel far. They'd set up roadblocks on all main arteries and wait for us to drive straight into their trap. So we're avoiding the main roads entirely? We'll get back on them eventually, but not right now. Fangxing glanced at the fuel gauge. First, we'll find a place to tally up our supplies and map out our next route. Lin Xiaohe spoke up from the back seat. 3 kilometers ahead sits an abandoned quarry. It's surrounded by mountains on all sides, with only one single access road leading inside. Park the RV deep within, and it'll be invisible from outside the perimeter. How good is the concealment? From the outside, it just looks like a pile of loose rock. Last time I passed by, I didn't spot the entry path until I was standing right in front of it. Fangxing nodded and eased off the gas to slow the RV. The quarry's entrance was cleverly hidden. The gravel access road split off the main lane, half blocked by 2 mounds of discarded stone rubble. Anyone not paying close attention would mistake it for a drainage ditch. Fangxing steered the RV inside. The gravel path curved behind the rubble piles before opening into a wide open clearing roughly the size of 2 basketball courts. Steep mined rock walls surrounded 3 sides, with the entry road serving as the 4th. Rusting, abandoned mining equipment littered the ground everywhere. This spot works perfectly. Fangxing parked the RV beneath the rock face and cut the engine. No line of sight from the highway, and the rock cliffs block aerial observation too. You're worried about them scouting from the air? Su Muing raised an eyebrow. Anything's possible in the apocalypse. The system documented flying mutated creatures, and there's no telling if the scavengers own drones for surveillance. Fangxing pushed open his door and walked to the rear cargo compartment. unlatching the back doors. 13 supply crates were stacked neatly beside the 2 diesel barrels. He began counting inventory, with Su Muing and Lin Xiaohe lending a hand, while Chun Min sat on the RV's metal steps, staring blankly at the crates. There was no greed in her gaze, only numb bewilderment, as if she were staring at objects from an entirely alien world. 12 crates of compressed biscuits, 20 packs each, Fang Xing tallied aloud. 2 crates of mineral water, 24 bottles per crate. 1 crate of military canned rations, 12 cans total. 3 first aid kits, each stocked with bandages, iodine, antibiotics, and hemostatic powder. 2 20-liter barrels of diesel fuel. Also, he pried open the final crate and froze for a split second. This crate held no food or medical supplies, only weapons. A crossbow with 12 steel bolts, a machete sharpened to a mirror sheen, 2 stun batons, plus a box of replacement batteries. The scavengers keep this gear in their supply trucks? Su Muing walked over and hefted the crossbow in her hands. This thing's surprisingly heavy. They probably run permanent supply outposts near the logistics park, and this truck was hauling armaments to those stations, Fang Xing said, swinging the machete through the air a couple of times. Excellent haul. Far better weapons than our old wrench and utility knife. He handed the crossbow to Su Muing. This is yours to wield. How's your aim? Su Muing lifted it, aiming toward a distant rock wall in the quarry. I was part of the university archery club for 2 years. They had archery clubs at universities back then. Some universities even have equestrian clubs. Just because you haven't seen one doesn't mean they don't exist. Su Muing set down her crossbow. Still, crossbows are different from bows. I'll need time to get used to it. Fang Xing strapped his machete to his waist, handing 1 taser each to Lin Xiaohe and Chun Min. Chun Min's fingers trembled as she took the taser, yet she gripped it tightly without letting go. Know how to use it? Fang Xing asked. Chun Min nodded. Just press the red button, right? That's it. Aim for a human or zombie's torso and hold the trigger. Once they're stunned, run, don't look back. After taking stock of their supplies, Fang Xing dragged several large boulders from the quarry's open ground and stacked them to block the entrance, leaving only a gap wide enough for a single vehicle to pass through. It was not a permanent defensive barrier, but it would at least stop outside vehicles from charging straight in. He climbed back into the RV and pulled out his phone, where his golden finger system interface popped up. Vehicle status: engine normal, transmission functional, spare left rear tires slightly low on pressure, body covered in scrapes, durability at 42, lightning rod intact, blueprint for camouflage coating unlocked. But installation requires a grade D RV, still need to upgrade. Fang Xing muttered to himself. Upgrade materials, steel plates, screws, welding rods, insulation, would have to be scavenged from abandoned vehicles and buildings. None of those could be found here in the quarry. As he pondered this, his phone vibrated with a system notification unrelated to his golden finger ability. Detected increase to team supply reserves. Recommendation: upgrade RV grade as soon as possible to unlock expanded storage capacity. Current RV storage: 8 items/12 slots. Capacity may be raised via supply compression. Prompt: disassemble supply crates into compressed supplies to save storage space. Learn the supply compression skill? Fang Xing tapped Learn. A brief tutorial popped up on the screen, demonstrating how to remove compressed biscuits from their packaging for consolidated storage and repackage mineral water into large capacity containers. These were basic end-time survival techniques, yet formalized as a system skill. After learning it, Fang Xing's mind felt far clearer on the logistics. He set to work breaking down supply crates. Su Muing and Lin Xiaohe pitched in as well. The 3 spent roughly half an hour condensing 13 crates of provisions into 8 standardized compressed supply bundles. Storage slot usage dropped from 12 to 8, freeing up room for more loot. His phone vibrated once again. Supply compression complete. RV storage utilization, 67. Bonus reward received. Survival points, plus 20. Current survival points, 370. 370 points, Fang Xing said. We can trade for plenty of gear once we reach the transfer station. Su Muing wiped sweat from her forehead. First, we need to figure out how to get there. The scavengers are waiting for us along the main highway. Fang Xing pulled out his phone and opened the golden finger map. The system's built-in map was far more detailed than any offline version, marking terrain, road conditions, and even major buildings. He zoomed in on the transfer station's direction, roughly 220 kilometers from their current position, with 3 travel routes to choose from. The main highway was the fastest but carried the highest risk. A rural bypass added 50 kilometers to the journey, yet was comparatively safer. A third route wound through farmland and villages, the shortest in distance, but with terrible road surfaces and a high likelihood of zombies lingering in the hamlets. We'll take the rural bypass. Feng Xing made his call. 50 extra kilometers of fuel, but it's safer. Are you certain it's safe? Su Muing questioned. If the scavengers can set up roadblocks on the main highway, they can do the same on country lanes. Manning roadblocks takes manpower. Mercedes, Feng Xing replied. We spotted at least 6 scavengers spread across 5 vehicles. They left a minimum of 2 men to guard their logistics yard, and 3 vehicles chased us. That leaves at most 1 mobile operative. A single person can't hold a checkpoint. Su Muing thought it over and nodded in agreement. Lin Xiaohe spoke up from the back seat. There's a flaw with the rural route. A stretch cuts straight through a village, which is almost definitely infested with zombies. Last time I passed through here, I didn't dare enter and had to take a massive detour. What's the condition of that long detour road? Terrible. A stretch of muddy track that gets boggy enough to trap vehicles after rain. Feng Xing glanced up at the sky. The thunderstorm had passed, the clouds scattered, sunlight filtering through the gaps. No rain was forecast for the immediate future. We'll drive through the village, Feng Xing decided. We'll swerve around any zombies we spot. If the road's clear, we cut straight through. Saves fuel. He fired up the RV. Su Muing sat in the passenger seat with her crossbow resting across her lap, while Lin Xiaohe and Chen Min occupied the rear bench. Chen Min had barely uttered a word since boarding, her gaze fixed on the empty stretch of road where their broken van had been left long ago. Feng Xing caught her distant stare in the rearview mirror, but said nothing. The RV rolled out of the quarry and onto the rural lane. The first 20 kilometers passed without incident. The road was narrow yet smoother than expected. Flanked by overgrown open farmland offering unobstructed lines of sight, they could spot zombies hundreds of meters ahead. At the 21st kilometer marker, a village came into view. It was a small hamlet of roughly 30 to 40 households spread along both sides of the road. Most buildings were brick and tile structures. Some lay collapsed while others still stood intact. A faded stone archway marked the village entrance, its carved characters worn illegible by time. Feng Xing eased off the gas, letting the vehicle creep slowly toward the arch. Any zombies? Su Muing raised her crossbow, pressing her eye to the sight. Feng Xing's golden finger lacked a dedicated zombie detection function, yet its vehicle monitoring system could pick up large living organisms within a set radius. He glanced at his phone screen, where a simplified radar feed loaded. Surrounding organism scan, 50-meter radius humans. For inside vehicle, unidentified organisms, 0. Warning, biological signal interference detected, blocked by building structures. Nothing within 50 meters, Feng Xing stated. But buildings are blocking the signal. We can't rule out threats further inside. The RV trundled slowly into the village proper. The streets were deserted, utterly devoid of zombies. Discarded household litter littered the pavement. Slippers, basins, children's toys, an overturned bicycle. There were no bloodstains, no black toxic residue, no drag marks anywhere. Has this village never been attacked by zombies? Su Muing frowned in confusion. Maybe it was attacked, then cleared out, Feng Xing theorized. Or perhaps, he cut himself off as the RV jolted sharply, having run over something hard on the asphalt. Feng Xing brought the vehicle to a halt. Glancing in the rearview mirror, he spotted a stuffed teddy bear flattened beneath their tire, cotton spilling out from its torn seams. A teddy bear, Su Muing noted, having caught sight of it too. Feng Xing was about to resume driving when his phone vibrated violently. Not a generic system alert, but a notification from his golden finger ability. Detected rapid fluctuation in surrounding biological signals. Unidentified organisms within 50 m, 3, 6, 12, count climbing rapidly. Warning, massive cluster of biological signatures detected in underground space. Source, village sewer network. Feng Xing's expression hardened. He slammed his foot flat on the accelerator, and the RV lurched forward at full speed. In the rearview mirror, the metal drain covers lining both sides of the street began to rattle and shake. One cover was suddenly shoved upward from beneath. A pale gray hand clawed its way over the edge of the drain, followed by a second. A rotted face emerged from the darkness, milky gray eyes squinting against the sunlight before flying wide open with hunger. Zombies! Su Muing shouted. Feng Xing did not slow down. The RV careened past the climbing corpse, its bumper grazing the creature's shoulder and shoving it back down into the sewer ditch. Yet more drain lids popped open one after another, hordes of zombies scrambling out from underground, reaching gnarled hands toward the passing vehicle before they even fully hauled themselves free. Feng Xing checked the radar feed on his phone, The count of unidentified organisms within 50 meters had surged to 37 and kept rising. This isn't a small village's worth of the undead. Feng Xing gritted his teeth. Every resident here turned into a zombie, and they've all been hiding underground. Why stay beneath the surface? Su Muing asked. The thunderstorm. Lin Xiaohe called out from the back seat. Thunderstorms scatter zombies, so they burrow into underground tunnels to take shelter. Once the storm passes, they remain hidden, only emerging once nighttime noise dies down. We stumbled right on them as they were preparing to surface. Feng Xing twisted the steering wheel left to dodge a zombie scrambling into the road ahead. This creature moved far faster than a standard F-grade undead. Its muscles had not fully decomposed. Its ashen skin stretched taut over its bones, allowing it to crawl at a startling pace. A swift stalker. Feng Xing recalled the classification from the system's zombie database. E-grade, enhanced speed and climbing prowess. Do not exit the vehicle, and never let them close in. The RV weaved wildly through the village streets as zombies swarmed from every direction, pouring out of sewers, shattered building doorways, even underground cellars, their bodies caked in mud and rot. Their milky gray eyes glinted eerily in the sunlight, like floating will-o'-the-wisps. Feng Xing stared fixed on the road ahead, white-knuckling the steering wheel. The golden finger system continuously updated the radar feed at the edge of his vision. The count of unidentified organisms within 50 meters had surpassed 60. Turn right at the next intersection. Lin Xiaohe yelled. Feng Xing spun the wheel right, veering into a narrower alley lined with taller buildings that blocked much of the sunlight, leaving the passage dim and damp. Zombies surged from doorways at both ends of the lane, trapping them front and rear. Feng Xing did not stop. He held the gas pedal down and charged straight into the horde blocking their path, not to crush them, but to cut clean through the crowd. Zombies slammed into the RV's bumper with dull thuds. Some were sent flying, others dragged beneath the chassis, a grinding crunch echoing from the undercarriage as the tires rolled over them. Su Muing's face paled, yet she never closed her eyes. She raised her crossbow and aimed at a zombie leaping onto the RV's running board, its claws scraping against the window frame. Su Muing squeezed the trigger, the bolt piercing straight through the undead skull. Black corrosive fluid splattered across the windshield, and the monster's grip slackened, its body tumbling off the vehicle's side. Perfect shot, Feng Xing called out. Su Muing offered no reply, rapidly reloading a second bolt with steady hands that betrayed no trace of a first-time crossbow user. The far end of the alley opened back up to the village entrance archway. Feng Xing caught sight of the stone monument and the highway stretching beyond it. But an overturned farm tricycle blocked the road beneath the arch, leaving only a narrow gap roughly 1.5 meters wide, too small for the RV to pass through. Hit the brakes, Lin Xiaohe shouted. Swerve left through the wheat field. Feng Xing jerked the steering wheel hard left, steering the RV off-road into the overgrown wheat field. The soil was soft and muddy. The tires sank deep before clawing free, the vehicle rocking violently side to side. Yet the far edge of the field opened directly onto the unobstructed highway, clear of both debris and zombies. Feng Xing floored the accelerator. The RV carved deep ruts through the wheat stalks and burst back onto the paved road. In the rearview mirror, the village zombies chased all the way to the highway's shoulder before halting. They stood lined along the roadside, milky gray eyes locked on the fleeing RV, jaws opening and closing in a repetitive, gurgling, hoarse groan. They would not stray far from the village bounds. At the very least, this horde would not. Feng Xing drove another 5 kilometers down the highway before pulling over to a stop. His hands shook violently, his clothes soaked through with sweat as though he'd been fully submerged in water. Anyone hurt? He asked. Su Muing shook her head. Lin Xiaohe shook her head. Cullen Min shook her head as well. 1 crossbow bolt expended, Su Muing reported. 11 remaining. Feng Xing nodded, leaning back against the seat and closing his eyes. The moment his lids shut, a system notification popped up via his golden finger ability. Village skirmish completed. Zombies eliminated / driven off, 63. Overall rating, B, minor loss of precision noted. Rewards, survival points plus 120. Driving proficiency EXP plus 15. New achievement unlocked, cutting through the zombie horde. RV durability reduced to 38. Immediate maintenance recommended. Feng Xing opened his eyes and glanced at the countdown timer on his phone. 42 hours remaining. Less than 2 days until the natural disaster struck. The RV's durability hovered below 40%. Feng Xing, Su Muing suddenly addressed him. The way you drove back there, Mercedes, it didn't look like you were simply running for your life. What did it look like then? Like you'd fully intended to drive straight through that mob of zombies. Fang Xing fell silent for 2 beats, then let out a faint laugh. Because I knew they couldn't catch up, he explained. Standard zombies top out at 5 kilometers an hour. Even swift stalkers only hit 10. This heap of junk RV can still hit 60. They don't stand a chance. What if the vehicle stalls mid-chase? Then we're dead meat, Fang Xing replied casually, as if discussing what to eat for lunch that afternoon. Which is exactly why I made sure it didn't stall. Su Muing drew a deep breath, resolving never to debate the subject of risk with this man again. Fang Xing restarted the RV and merged back onto the rural bypass. The map showed roughly 170 kilometers left to the transfer station. If they encountered no further delays, they would arrive by tomorrow afternoon. Yet none of them could predict what other threats waited along the road ahead. The sun dipped low toward the horizon, painting the sky a blazing tangerine orange. The RV rumbled forward through the golden glow, dragging a long, dark shadow behind it. Fang Xing glanced in the rearview mirror. The village had vanished completely over the distant horizon. He could not tell whether the pair of eyes he'd spotted deep within the sewers had been real or a hallucination. Pale gray eyes, unlike a typical zombie's, sharp with some glimmer of conscious thought, fixed unblinkingly on him from the darkness. They had locked gazes the instant the last zombie clambered out of the drain. The creature had not lunged to attack. It had merely watched him, then vanished back into the blackness below. Fang Xing tightened his grip on the steering wheel, forcing the haunting image from his mind. It was likely sheer exhaustion playing tricks on his eyes. A simple optical illusion. Maybe. His phone screen flickered to life, a faint gray line of text from the golden finger system scrolling across the display. Unknown biological signature detected. Insufficient data for classification. Fang Xing chose not to show the message to Su Muing. He flipped the phone face down on the dashboard and continued driving. The highway stretched endlessly forward, winding toward an unknown destination. The countdown to the catastrophic natural disaster ticked steadily downward, second by second. Fang Xing drove roughly 10 kilometers clear of the village before pulling to a stop in front of a dilapidated auto repair shop. The RV desperately needed maintenance. Its durability had plummeted to 38. The undercarriage had scraped against countless rocks in the wheat field, and the left front wheel emitted a constant rattling clunk, its wheel bearing on the verge of complete failure. His golden finger system laid out every fault point with brutal clarity. Worn left front wheel bearing, deformed chassis skid plate, minor oil seepage from the right rear suspension. Can we fix anything here? Su Muing climbed out of the vehicle and surveyed the rundown shop. It was a modest space with 2 service bays, piles of blackened tires and discarded spare parts heaped by the entrance. A yellowed, curled shop for sale poster was taped to the glass front door. We have to fix it whether the shop's usable or not. Mercedes. Fang Xing knelt to inspect the left front wheel. That bearing will see solid after another 20 kilometers, locking the wheel completely. Chen Min and Lin Xiaohe exited the RV as well. Chen Min's mental state had improved vastly. No longer listless and vacant, she voluntarily grabbed a broom to sweep shattered glass from the entrance, her movements clumsy yet earnest. Lin Xiaohe patted the perimeter to scan for threats. Her leg injury healed faster than anticipated, allowing her to walk normally, though running remained out of the question. Fang Xing hauled his toolbox out of the rear compartment and set to work removing the left front wheel. Su Muing assisted, handing over tools and holding his phone to cast light into tight spaces. The shop's rolling metal shutter hung half open, plunging the interior into pitch darkness. Fang Xing sent Lin Xiaohe inside to clear the premises first. Only after confirming there were no zombies or human occupants did he back the RV into one of the service bays. The shop's abandoned, but the parts cabinet still has stock. Lin Xiaohe emerged carrying a bearing box. Will this model fit? Fang Xing glanced at the box for a split second, his eyes lighting up. Perfect match. Great find. He rummaged further through the storage shelves and uncovered an oil filter, air filter, half a can of brake fluid, and even an unopened brand new windshield wiper assembly. Windshield wipers. Fang Xing held up the box, elated as though he'd won the lottery. My RV's finally going to have functional wipers. Su Muing shot him a sideways glance. Your tires are about to fall off, and that's what you're excited about. Wipers let me see the road, tires let me drive it. Both matter, but wipers are more critical. I'm nearsighted. Fang Xing stated matter-of-factly. You wouldn't want me squinting blindly through rain, would you? Aren't you still wearing your glasses? Shattered on the first day of the apocalypse. I've been driving purely by instinct ever since. Su Muing sighed deeply, electing not to press him further on driving blind by feel. 40 minutes later, the wheel bearing was fully replaced, and the RV received a makeshift tune-up. The oil filter was swapped out, the windshield washer reservoir topped off, and the new wiper blades installed. The bent chassis skid plate was temporarily secured with wire and heavy-duty tape. Ugly as the repair looked, it would not fall loose mid-journey. The Golden Finger system updated the vehicle stats in real time. Durability rebounded from 38 to 49, and the left front wheel bearing status shifted from critical risk to good condition. This should hold until we reach the transfer station. Feng Xing brushed engine grease off his palms. How much fuel do we have left? Su Muing checked the fuel gauge. A little over half a tank, roughly 150 kilometers of range. We've still got 170 kilometers left to the station. We'll need to conserve fuel or scavenge more diesel along the way, Feng Xing said. Lin Xiao has stepped out of the shop carrying a red plastic jerrycan, sniffing its contents. Diesel, about 15 liters. Found it tucked away in the storage closet. She set the can down beside the RV. Feng Xing gave her a thumbs up. Lin Xiaohe possessed an innate talent for scavenging. She always unearthed vital supplies others overlooked entirely. After topping off the fuel tank, the RV now held barely enough diesel to reach the transfer station. Feng Xing glanced at the countdown timer on his phone, 39 hours remaining. Less than 2 days until the electromagnetic pulse struck. The system had yet to issue a detailed formal warning, yet the Golden Finger ability had dropped subtle hints. A new electromagnetic shielding parameter had appeared in the vehicle status monitor, currently sitting at 0. Feng Xing. Su Muing called out to him. That system on your phone has something new popped up on it. Feng Xing knew she was referring to his cheat ability system. He'd been hiding it all along. But you can't wrap paper around fire. As a programmer, Su Muing had an unmatched eye for electronic devices. Yeah, Mercedes, Feng Xing decided to come clean. Right after the first day of the apocalypse, I unlocked a hidden system called the Apocalypse Chariot Master System. It lets me check vehicle conditions, unlock modification blueprints, and allocate skill points to driving abilities. Su Muing stared straight at him for 3 full seconds. So you knew the bearing on the front left wheel was about to fail? I did. And you knew a thunderstorm was rolling in. I got an early warning of it. Why didn't you say anything sooner? Feng Xing scratched the back of his head. Well, it sounds totally crazy if you just blurt it out. Plus I thought everyone else might have one too, until I realized it's only me. Su Muing fell silent. Lin Xiaohe and Chen Min had overheard the conversation, but neither cut in. In the apocalypse, all sorts of bizarre things could happen. If one more person had a special cheat skill, the group's odds of survival only went up a little. All right then, does your system say exactly when the electromagnetic pulse will hit? Su Muing asked. Feng Xing pulled up his system interface and spotted a line of faint gray text. Estimated trigger time, upon countdown reaching 0. Type of calamity, unrestricted electromagnetic pulse. Recommendation, construct a Faraday cage to shield electronic equipment. A Faraday cage? Su Muing frowned. Our RV's body is all metal. If we disconnect all external wiring for our electronics, the whole vehicle shell will act as a natural Faraday cage in theory. That's the theory, sure, Feng Xing said. But there's a hole in the roof I patched with aluminum foil tape. It doesn't conduct electricity. The EMP surge will funnel straight through that opening and fry every circuit inside the RV. What do we do then? Feng Xing glanced over at the repair shop. An old alternating current welding machine sat inside, alongside several rolls of wire mesh. An idea clicked into place in his head. We'll weld a metal plate over that roof hole, Feng Xing explained. Then cover the entire roof with wire mesh and connect it to the vehicle frame to form a complete conductive pathway. You know how to weld? Su Muing raised an eyebrow. Nope, Feng Xing said without a shred of embarrassment. But I can read an instruction manual. The shop's vintage welder wasn't overly complicated to operate. Feng Xing dug a sheet of steel of suitable size out of the parts cabinet and cut it to match the shape of the roof hole with a cutter. Su Muing helped him trim the wire mesh, spread it across the roof, and fasten its edges to the RV frame with copper wire. Lin Xiaohe and Chen Min handled hauling materials and holding lights for illumination. Feng Xing slipped on a welding mask, took a deep breath, and flipped the welder's trigger. A blinding arc of blue light flared up, accompanied by a sharp sizzling hum that echoed through the shop. His welds were hideous, twisted and crooked, like a worm crawling across steel. But the plate stuck fast, sealed securely over the roof opening. Your welding technique could use a lot of practice, Su Muing commented. As long as it works, who cares what it looks like? Feng Xing pushed the mask up and wiped sweat off his forehead. I'm not a professional welder after all. He laid 3 full layers of wire mesh, each secured to the RV body with copper wiring. The cheat system's readout updated, Electromagnetic shielding level, 067. Not enough, Fangxing said. We need at least 90 coverage to be safe. Is there anything else we can use? Su Muing asked. Fangxing wandered around the shop and found an old microwave. He tore it apart and pulled out its dense copper wire mesh lining. He laid this copper screen over the top layer of regular mesh and tied it down with more copper wire. Electromagnetic shielding level, 89. Still just a hair short, Fangxing frowned. Lin Xiaohe suddenly spoke up. There's a discarded satellite TV dish in the corner of the garage. It's metal, curved, should reflect electromagnetic waves. Fangxing carried the dish over, fastened it to the roof with iron wire, and secured it tight. The roof now looked like some grotesque scrap metal art piece. A steel patch, 3 layers of wire mesh, copper screening, plus a satellite dish bolted on top, ugly beyond belief. Electromagnetic shielding level, 94. We're good. Fangxing let out a relieved breath. This should hold against the EMP blast. Su Muing stared at the lopsided metal contraption on the roof, the corners of her mouth twitching. Your roof somehow looks even worse than it did before. Looks don't matter. All that counts is staying alive. Fangxing hopped down from the roof and brushed dust off his palms. Pack up our tools. We're hitting the road. As they tidied their equipment, Chunmin suddenly shouted, Someone's over there. Fangxing followed her line of sight. A figure was walking toward them along the highway outside the repair shop. The person moved strangely, hunched forward with stiff arms hanging limp at their sides, shuffling their feet slowly. A zombie. Su Muing raised her crossbow. Doesn't seem like one. Fangxing squinted to get a better look. Zombies never walk in a straight line, and they avoid light. This person's heading straight for our light. They look like they've got a clear destination. The figure drew closer. It was a man in his 40s, wearing a tattered jacket covered in dust. His lips were pale, and his eyes held normal black pupils, not the milky white orbs of the undead. He's alive. Su Muing lowered the crossbow, though she didn't fully relax her guard. The man stopped at the shop's entrance and looked over Fangxing's group. His gaze lingered on the RV, especially the bizarre metal setup covering its roof. You're building electromagnetic shielding? The man's voice was hoarse but clear. Fangxing nodded. Who are you? My name's Lao Zhao, the man said. I used to work security at a highway service station. I've been trekking east for days since the apocalypse hit. Saw the light coming from this repair shop and came over to check. Fangxing sized him up. Lao Zhao had a stocky build, camouflage trousers paired with worn military boots, and a dagger sheathed at his waist. His hands were lined with thick calluses. Not the smooth marks of someone who writes, but the rough texture of someone who's wielded blades and firearms. Ex-military? Fangxing asked. Discharged, Lao Zhao replied. Served 8 years in the Army's mess hall. Got a security job after I left service. A mess hall cook. A thought crossed Fangxing's mind. In the apocalypse, anyone who can cook is pure gold. Need a ride with us? Fangxing asked bluntly. Lao Zhao didn't answer right away. He glanced at Fangxing, Su Muing, Lin Xiaohe, and Chunmin before speaking. I don't have much to offer in return, but I can cook, take night watch shifts, and handle firearms. Though I don't have a gun on me right now, I also know a few things about this stretch of highway. 30 kilometers ahead there's a supply cache the scavengers stashed full of goods. Fangxing exchanged a quick glance with Su Muing. You know about the scavengers? Su Muing questioned him. I know them, Lao Zhao said flatly. They owe me a bullet. He rolled up the sleeve of his left arm to reveal a scar. Not a knife wound, the jagged mark of shrapnel grazing his skin. You fought them? At the service station. They raided supplies, and I covered a group of survivors so they could run. Took that shrapnel hit myself. Lao Zhao spoke calmly, as if recounting someone else's story. Fangxing weighed his options. An extra pair of hands would be invaluable, and a discharged soldier with combat experience and cooking skills was a rare find. He couldn't pass this chance up. Climb aboard, Fangxing said. Fair warning, there's no free food on this RV. You'll have to pull your weight. Lao Zhao nodded and stepped into the vehicle. Chunmin offered him her seat, squeezing into the back row to sit beside Lin Xiaohe instead. The RV pulled back onto the highway. Lao Zhao sat in the rear seat, gazing out at the barren wasteland, and suddenly spoke. That EMP shielding rig you built on the roof is ugly, but it'll work. I learned the principle of Faraday cages back in the service. You did everything correctly. It's definitely an eyesore Mercedes, Su Muing said. But it'll keep us alive, so we can't complain. Lao Zhao cracked a smile. It was the first time Fangxing had seen the middle-aged man grin. A plain, genuine smile that felt reassuring. The sky darkened once more. Fangxing flipped on the headlights. The new windshield wipers ran smoothly, clearing the glass for a crisp view of the road ahead. There's a gas station 25 kilometers up ahead, Lao Zhao said. It has underground storage tanks that should still hold fuel. The scavengers stashed supplies there too. But they've pulled out recently. They headed back to their base to prep for the EMP blast. How do you know all this? I overheard them talking at the service station, Lao Zhao explained. Their squad leader said once the EMP hits, every electronic device will be rendered useless. So they're driving all their vehicles back to a logistics park to set up mass shielding. The gas station stockpile is unguarded for now. Fang Xing glanced at the fuel gauge. If they could refuel there, they'd have more than enough petrol to reach the transfer hub. Let's check it out. Fang Xing pressed down on the gas and accelerated forward. The 25-kilometer stretch passed in under 20 minutes. The gas station sat on the right side of the highway. Unlike the abandoned stations they'd passed earlier, its signboard still flickered with power. Fluorescent tubes inside the lightbox sputtered on and off. Proof electricity was running. There's power here? Su Muing looked surprised. Probably solar generators. Fang Xing pulled the RV to a stop. Lao Zhao, come with me inside. Su Muing, stay here and guard the vehicle. Keep the crossbow aimed at the entrance. Lin Xiaoa, stand by to back us up. Chen Min, don't leave the RV under any circumstances. Fang Xing and Lao Zhao climbed out. Fang Xing gripped a machete, while Lao Zhao clutched his dagger, and the pair stepped one behind the other into the station's convenience store. The shop interior was relatively clean, with plenty of stocks still lining the shelves. Instant noodles, bottled water, batteries, lighters. A door behind the checkout counter led out to the outdoor fuel tank compound. The storage tanks are outside, Lao Zhao said. I'll show you. They stepped back outside, lifted the tank access cover, and shone their phone flashlights inside. The underground tank still held roughly a third of its diesel capacity. Fang Xing grabbed a hand crank pump and began refueling the RV. Liquid fuel gurgled steadily into the tank, the gauge slowly climbing from half full to three-quarters full. Just as they finished refueling, Su Muing's voice rang out from the RV. Fang Xing. Two vehicles coming from the east. Fang Xing spun around. Two sets of headlights were rapidly closing in along the eastern stretch of highway. Scavengers? Fang Xing asked Lao Zhao. Lao Zhao narrowed his eyes to peer ahead. No. The scavengers drive black SUVs. This first one's white. The second looks like an ambulance. The two vehicles pulled to a halt outside the gas station. The lead car was a white pickup truck with several passengers riding in its open cargo bed. The second vehicle was indeed an ambulance, its roof emergency lights flashing silently with no accompanying siren blare. The pickup's door swung open, and a young woman in camouflage fatigues jumped out. A rifle held loosely in her hands, not raised to threaten anyone. Easy now, she called over to Fang Xing. We're not here to steal supplies. Our vehicle's broken down. Could we borrow some tools? What's broken? Fang Xing asked. The ambulance's generator, the woman replied. We've got a critically wounded patient on board who needs the ventilator running. Do any of you know electrical work? Su Muing leaned her head out of the RV window. I'm an electrical technician. Fang Xing took a deep breath. Every encounter with strangers in the apocalypse was a gamble. But he glanced at the ambulance window. He could clearly see a person lying strapped to a gurney, tubes snaking across their body, while another passenger manually squeezed a resuscitation bag beside them. Su Muing, go take a look, Fang Xing ordered. Lao Zhao, stick close to her. I'll stand guard here by the RV. Su Muing grabbed her toolbox and walked over, Lao Zhao trailing behind her with his dagger hidden up his sleeve. Fang Xing stood beside the RV, his hand resting firmly on the hilt of his machete. He had no way of knowing if this group meant harm or goodwill, but he knew one thing for certain. In the apocalypse, if you're too afraid to stop and save a life, you're no different from the Walking Dead. His phone vibrated once in his pocket. A new alert popped up from his cheat system. Detected new survivor group faction status. Unknown threat level. Low. No hostile activity observed thus far. Recommendation. Proceed with cautious contact. May yield valuable intelligence or potential new allies. Fang Xing slipped the phone back into his pocket. Far off on the horizon, a faint pale gray flicker pulsed in the sky. It wasn't lightning, nor vehicle headlights, something entirely unfamiliar to him. Countdown remaining, 35 hours. The electromagnetic pulse was drawing nearer, one tick at a time.